Chapter 169. I think, the hippopotamus murmured in a daze. Got stood up? When he came to his senses, he looked down at the curry fish jelly that he had eaten 3 mouthfuls of. He abruptly raised the plate, opened his mouth, and poured the entire fish jelly into his mouth before chewing madly. Terrifying spiciness and fury erupted from his face again, burning his gray face red. Countless blood vessels appeared in his eyes. So it's tribulation ash. He identified the ingredients excitedly. It's tribulation ash that gives me this uneasy feeling. I've never seen such pure tribulation ash before. Was it specially made for this dish? The skinny man said vaguely. There's also fury. This is a man-made fury, a pure fury and killing intent. Blood, there's the smell of blood. The banshee inhaled the spiciness of the curry deeply, and her eyes glowed. Poisonous blood, a rare poisonous blood, it's of the dragon species. Oh, it hides deep sorrow and powerlessness, as well as an inescapable sense of death. What a familiar feeling, it's like the taste of my mother. It's so exquisite, it's irresistible. The skinny man grinned and greedily chewed the fish jelly in his mouth. With each bite, I can feel a strong sense of anticipation and an inescapable sense of loss, as if I'm wandering between gaining and losing. Is this the true essence of pigeon curry? The frenzied gluttony soon came to an abrupt halt. In the silence, only the black shadow at the back of the line continued to eat the curry on his plate without saying anything. In the end, he put down his spoon. In terms of skills, you're still lacking. No, I should say, you don't even look like a chef, do you? The black shadow slowly wiped his mouth and commented, creativity and ingredients have made up for your shortcomings. I can see that you have an excellent cooking heart and dark wisdom, and you have ample potential in the field of cooking. He paused for a moment, and there was no arrogance in his voice. Instead, he gave a careful evaluation. Although this dish doesn't have the right to be served in the main banquet of the abyss, it's still qualified as a snack. I'll give you 7 points. 8 points, the banshee chimed in. 7.5 points, the hippopotamus judged. 7 points, the skinny man said. And so, Huai passed the preliminaries, and completed this competition perfectly. He also received an invitation to the international competition half a year later. Thus, in the silence, the youth happily took a step back and turned around to leave. Just as he brushed past him, he heard the rotting man's mocking laughter. What pigeon curry, it's just trash. She arrogantly retracted her gaze from Huai, held her cauldron, and slowly walked to the judging panel. Please taste my work. Which stew? The lid of the cauldron was slowly opened. Then, in the dark green soup, countless fish heads and messy tentacles slowly appeared, revealing a nightmarish state. Poisonous origin substances began to emanate from within, bringing with them terrifying cries of pain and suffering. These cries and curses seemed to have come from the depths of hell. Just by looking at it, countless murmurs sounded in his ears. No abuse. He wouldn't abuse him. Let's read chapter 50. Would Feng Pigeon lie to you? Even though he's dead, he's grown up. Just by looking at it, one could feel the hatred and curses that seeped into it. It was as if it would bring misfortune and make people want to avoid it. Huai footsteps paused. He turned around curiously, as if he was looking forward to the results. He had a disgusting smile on his face, which made her even angrier. She gritted her teeth. Soon, you will discover how weak and laughable your work is compared to true dark cuisine. She held her anger and hatred in her heart. She reached out to scoop the soup and elegantly presented it to the judges. Such an excellent appearance was much better than Huai pretentious gimmick. The judges glanced at each other. For a moment, their mouths twitched. But when they picked up their spoons and carefully tasted a spoonful, they froze in place. They frowned. Because there was no taste. There was still no taste. Was it the same as before? No, it was more like there was no salt or chicken essence. Even though the texture was not bad, No matter how they tasted it, they could not find the rich impact that they had imagined. The judges frowned. They scooped up another spoonful and smacked their lips carefully. Their brows slowly furrowed. No salt. The hippopotamus unhappily raised his head and asked. The condiments don't seem very fresh either. The skinny man shook his head. It's bland and tasteless. It's like a pot of soup that has been boiled for a long time. There's no fresh feeling at all. The banshee indifferently shook her head. It's just average. She froze in place, staring blankly at the judges. Her lips trembled in shock. Her face under the disguise gradually paled. After a long time, she looked at the huge shadow at the back as if she was holding on to her last hope. The shadow did not speak. More accurately, after the soup was served, he did not touch it after smelling it. Sensing the contestant's gaze, the shadow coldly raised his eyes and glanced at her. You lost. No, how is this possible? She madly rushed forward and snatched the bowl from the hippopotamus's hands. She drank a mouthful and felt the pain and taste of the rich impact of the resentment origin substance exploding in her mouth. She could not believe it. I didn't make any mistakes. There were no problems with any steps. No, you were wrong from the beginning. The banshee mockingly looked at her and spoke the truth. You were slow. You were one step too slow. One step was enough to determine the current outcome. The hippopotamus sympathetically shook his head. You lost. Regretfully, we cannot let you advance. But for the sake of your efforts, we will not impose a curse on you. Please leave. No! The woman roared, unable to restrain her anger. There's a problem here. There must be a problem. The skinny man uninterestedly snapped his fingers. A waiter walked forward, reached out and suddenly grabbed her neck. Step by step, he violently dragged her out of the arena. The woman crazily screamed and struggled. Her cloak fell down, revealing a large patch of strange blue-black tattoos on her shoulders. When she saw Huai Shi, she froze. Huai Shi was smiling, as if he had expected it. I'm sorry. He shook his head in pity. After eating my mang si maggot, cough cough, my pigeon curry, anything you eat will no longer taste good. This was his purpose of serving the dish in advance before his opponent. The decaying toxin in the blood of the blue-crowned dragon mixed with the ashes could numb the judge's sense of taste and perception, causing their body and soul to enter a short period of sage after intense stimulation. During this period, everything would be bland and tasteless. When Huai Shi stood in front of her, she was bound to lose. It's you! It's you! The woman crazily screamed, reaching out to scratch him, but she could not reach him. The waiter's speed increased. As if deliberately waiting for him to finish his explanation, he pulled her up and threw her out of the door that appeared in front of him. The door closed. The woman disappeared. Huai Shi raised her head and saw the judges with strange smiles on their faces. They did not seem to be angry about being tricked. Instead, they looked at Huai Shi with more praise and encouragement. Perhaps he had succeeded in promoting the theme of the Demon Chef competition's first place and second place in the competition. Wasn't the life and death struggle between the contestants the best program to eat? At this moment, he saw Luo Xian carry her wok to the judges' table. Huai Shi was stunned. The words just now were not only for the defeated woman, but also to remind Luo Xian to wait for a while before presenting her work. But he did not expect her to be so confident. She actually served the dish directly. Even the judges were a little stunned. Commendable courage. The hippo nodded and praised. He looked down at the pickled fish in front of him and frowned. Then, he poked at it with his chopsticks and his frown deepened. Something seemed wrong. There was no sudden golden light. There was no soaring resentment. There was no strange fragrance spreading. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a very ordinary pickled fish. He opened his mouth suspiciously and took a bite. Then, he was stunned again. His expression suddenly twisted, as if he had seen a ghost, or a ghost that came out of nowhere and saw him. In short, He looked like he had seen a ghost. He looked at Luo Xian in a daze. His fingers twitched. You! The hippo made a sound with difficulty and suddenly raised his hand to cover his mouth. Then, in the screams of countless audience, he bent down and vomited. He vomited! He actually vomited! After being used to countless storms, the judges actually fell in front of this pickled cabbage fish. Not only the hippo, but the skinny man also spat out white foam. He forcibly covered his mouth to prevent himself from vomiting. Fortunately, his mouth was relatively small. He could cover it, but the banshee had already covered her face and screamed. It was actually so unpalatable. Even the black shadow was stunned for a long time and said in a startled voice, "The younger generation will surpass us in time. The younger generation will surpass us in time. This boy will definitely not be a fish in a pond in the future. So powerful." Huaishur looked at the judges with a stunned expression. He took out a magnifying glass and observed the remaining fish in the pot attentively. But no matter how he looked at it, it looked like a plate of ordinary pickled fish. There was nothing unusual about the smell and appearance. It even made him have some appetite. "Do you want some?" Luo Xian picked up a piece of fish with chopsticks and put it on a plate. She handed it over and smiled helplessly. "To be honest, I think it's just so." Huaishur looked down at the plate in front of him in a daze. He swallowed his saliva. To be honest, he knew that he seemed to be looking for trouble, but he just couldn't help but want to know what this thing tasted like. Anyway, he watched the whole cooking process. There was no poison or any unusual cooking methods at all. It was just an ordinary fish. No matter how unpalatable it was, it couldn't be that bad with such a mood. Huaishur made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. He picked up the chopsticks. He took a bite. 3 seconds later, he knelt on the ground and vomited the stinky bile in embarrassment. His face was full of tears. How could, he shouted in grief and indignation, how could it be so unpalatable? Chapter 170. Disgusting. Too disgusting. It was so disgusting that words couldn't describe it. It was as if 100,000 hooligans had just finished playing soccer and were now dancing on the tip of his tongue. When that taste surfaced on the tip of his tongue, Huaishur's mind was completely blank. His origin substance wailed in agony, and he seemed to have lost consciousness in an instant. However, he had still lost that memory. It was as if even the Book of Destiny wasn't willing to record that terrifying memory, leaving it blank. That was an indescribable feeling of despair. Huaishur began to regret and fear. Immediately afterwards, he began to ponder the meaning of life, the universe, and this world. He wondered where he was going, and why he was still alive. By the time he came back to his senses, he was already kneeling on the ground. Sweat was pouring out of his body, and he couldn't help but convulse. He could feel waves of pain emanating from his stomach. Very quickly, he was free. He couldn't feel his stomach anymore. Even his taste buds had closed off from the terrifying impact, blocking out that nightmarish feeling. All that was left was a terrifying shadow that lingered in his soul. Why? Huaishur couldn't help but cry. He asked from the bottom of his heart, "How could you make something so disgusting look so good?" Luo Xian sighed helplessly when she saw his wretched appearance. Very quickly, a sweet smile appeared on her face. "Silly child." She bent down and gently stroked Huaishur's hair. She gently said, "Of course it's because of love. Yes. In this cruel world, apart from love, was there anything else that could make everything so beautiful? Love." This was the conclusion of the Chef Demon tournament. Love triumphed over everything. By the time Huaishur completely regained consciousness, he was already standing on the podium. He was like a marionette as he received the invitation to the main competition in half a year from the judges. He felt as if he had just experienced a nightmare that he didn't want to recall. "Little brother, you really aren't afraid of death." What kind of damn thing did you eat? The crow landed on his shoulder and asked curiously. Your origin substance almost collapsed. You were almost turned into a vegetable by a dish? Please, don't say any more. Huaisher begged helplessly. Don't remind me of the stupid thing I just did. All right. Crow shrugged and sighed, patting his head sympathetically. It's all in the past, isn't it? So I have to forget who pushed me into this pit of fire. To be honest, you can't be blamed for eating other people's dishes. Crow was about to say something, but under Huaisher's dead fish eyes, he was speechless. Although he had received an invitation to the main competition, Huaisher would not go even if he was beaten to death. It was said that during the main competition, even the high and mighty rancher would send a doppelganger to watch. Why would Huaisher go? Sending food to the door. At that time, people would see that it was this little brother who killed many of my family members and ruined my business. I'll use him to cook for me. What about Huaisher? He couldn't even run. He would obediently receive his reward and go home. Otherwise, he would really think that he was the boss of hell. Very quickly, the 3 contestants who had passed were brought to an office of the organizing committee. An attendant carefully opened the box of gifts from hell and took out 5 items. According to the rules of the competition, you can choose any one item. After the attendant finished arranging all the items, he retreated to the side, letting the contestants choose whatever they wanted. There was a bowl half filled with white ashes, a yellowed black and white photograph, a jar of seasoning, a small wooden bottle, and a small leather ring with 2 curly hairs growing out of it. It looked like a second-hand store clearing out good. However, every single item emanated origin substance fluctuations that were either shocking or contained. Some of them were formed purely from origin substance. Without a doubt, these 5 items were all relics from the border. As long as the words "relics from the border" were attached, it meant that they were undeniably expensive and rare. If they had the ability to help people, the price would probably be even higher. From this, it could be seen that the Chef Demon Competition's organizing committee was extremely wealthy. Huaisher examined the 5 items one by one. The most precious item in the bowl of white ashes wasn't actually the bowl. The bowl was just a container. What was frightening was the dozen or so grams of bone ashes that contained a strange aura. The bone-deep pressure and cold aura proved the value of this pile of bone ashes. Even though he didn't know what it was used for, it was probably an indispensable material for alchemy creations and curses. That yellowed photograph was purely an illusion. It didn't have a physical body. In other words, it was a curse. A curse that had been forcefully given a physical body by the leaders of hell, a curse that could be touched and picked up by humans. However, the instant one picked it up, the curse would probably wrap around them, right? However, what was even more precious than the curse was the fate that it represented. Perhaps the person who was given the curse would also receive some sort of fate that was passed down in hell. It was just like a treasure map. No one knew what the final destination was. The jar of seasoning was obviously a jar of seasoning. It was filled with all kinds of crystalline condiments, and a strange fragrance could be smelled from dozens of steps away. Then, he could feel his origin substance begin to rapidly mutate. Huaisher could only rejoice that the effects of his antidote hadn't expired yet. He couldn't recognize the wooden bottle. It was covered with patterns and spots that resembled human faces. Being stared at by so many distorted faces, Huaisher didn't feel good. As for the small leather band at the end, he couldn't tell what it was at all. Armband. Cyclops O. Jen's brother's garment. Crow calmly explained, the person who wears it will receive 1/10 of the Cyclops' power, but the price is that they will never be able to reproduce. Giant strength. Huaisher's eyes instantly lit up. This was a good item. A divine tool that purely increased attributes. Even the shortest Cyclops was at least 200 meters tall. Even 1/10 of his power would be shocking enough. As for the price of having no descendants, even though it sounded terrifying, There would probably be many people who would wear it for the sake of this tempting power. But why is the name so strange? Huaishur asked. Does it have some sort of background story? No, almost every Cyclops can make an armband like this. There are actually quite a few of them in the modern realm and on the border. Crow laughed as if she was mocking him. All of this comes from an ancient tradition that the Cyclops have when newborns are born. What tradition? Are you sure you want to know? Crow's expression became strange. I'm not the one who wants to say this. If you want to say it, then say it. How can you keep me in suspense halfway through? Okay, so the so-called ancient tradition is… She paused for a moment and coughed twice. Circumcision. Why was my mouth so king cheap? Huaishur gave himself a big slap in the face. He regretted his actions. He already had enough nightmares tonight. Why did he have to make life difficult for himself? The first to make a choice was Wild Hunt. He walked straight up, picked up the jar of seasoning, put it in his pocket, and turned around to leave. He didn't have any desire to stay and chat. Which one should we take? Huaishur asked. The wooden bottle. That's the urn of tree blood. It's an important material for your advancement. Hurry up. Although it's not precious, it's a rare material that can only be found in the depths of hell above level 20. Crow urged, if you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. Huaishur decisively stepped forward and reached for the wooden bottle the size of a milk bottle. Then, it touched the other hand. Oh, what a coincidence! Luoxian raised her eyebrows and seemed surprised. I want one too. Huaishur frowned in confusion and looked at the big sister in front of him. She did it on purpose, didn't she? No matter how he thought about it, it should be on purpose. She didn't choose earlier or later. She just had to come and intercept Huaishur when he was choosing. Yes, what a coincidence! Huaishur nodded but didn't take back his hand. Instead, he looked straight at her through the mask. Can't you give it to me? I can consider it. Luoxian smiled mysteriously. How about we make a bet? What bet? Before Huaishur could open his mouth to ask, he felt a bone-piercing chill engulf him. A premonition of death. In the blink of an eye, he retreated 4 steps away and was ready for battle. Luoxian didn't take the opportunity to take the bottle away. Instead, she retreated a few steps like him and looked around. Finally, her gaze fell on the mop in the corner of the room. As for what to bet, she slowly walked over and picked up the mop. With a kick, she broke the mop in the way, leaving a long wooden stick in her hand. The sharp stubble pointed straight at Huaishur's throat. According to the favorite rule between ascenders, let's have a match. Luoxian casually carried the mop on her shoulder and tilted her head to look at him with a smile. The loser has to give up this thing. How about it? And the winner? Huaishur's expression became indifferent. It's very simple. Luoxian smiled. The winner can live. Isn't that enough? In that instant, Huaishur retreated quickly. He retreated again. He retreated 10 steps. His fingers twitched slightly, and he grasped the handle of the invisible axe behind him. As for the mop, it had already pierced the place where his throat should have been. Luoxian's speed wasn't fast. To be honest, it wasn't easy for a sender without a stigmata to reach such a level. She was almost touching the edge of the 3rd rank. In other words, she had reached such an extreme speed purely by relying on her own muscle strength. It couldn't be described as innate. But what made Huaishur even more fearful was that simple stab actually gave Huaishur the feeling that he had no way to escape except to retreat. He was being stared at by some sinister and terrifying thing, by some bloodthirsty beast. Luoxian smiled. That abnormal and terrifying killing intent burst out from her slender body. Along with her scarlet eyes, it stabbed straight at Huaishur. Then, she licked her lips excitedly, like a hyena feverish, happy to see the prey. Let's start the duel fair and square. Chapter 171. Before she had even finished speaking, pitch-black flames began to rise from Huaishur's chest. The tiles beneath his feet began to crack as Huai Shi shot through the air. The invisible axe chopped downward. As if she could see the invisible axe, Luo Xian suddenly slid forward in a strange manner, barely dodging the axe's blade. Her ears twitched slightly, and a look of understanding appeared on her face. Is it an axe? That's hard to say. Huai Shi whistled. An axe? A sword? No, it might even be a spear. Do you want to give it a try? In his hand, the origin substance on the axe's blade constantly changed, constantly adjusting the axe's center of gravity and length. He casually chopped down, deceiving Luo Xian's senses. Luo Xian was stunned. An opportunity! Huai Shi's eyes widened as he charged forwards again. However, the axe he swept out with was actually blocked by the mop. It was as if he could see the shape of the axe's blade. The mop in Luo Xian's hand collided with the axe's handle, just barely managing to neutralize Huai Shi's attack. As if she had discovered something, she couldn't help but laugh. Little brother, you're so gentle. You're actually using the back of an axe? It's called being polite. Huai Shi suddenly charged forwards, chopping down with the axe again. However, when the mop collided with it again, the steel-like origin substance suddenly dissipated. Huai Shi raised his left hand and began to grow, forming the outline of a sacrificial blade that stabbed towards Luo Xian's neck. Immediately afterwards, he stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Sloppy footwork. The mop's end whipped towards Huai Shi's calf, causing his entire body to go numb. Just as he was about to stumble, the mop suddenly trembled and chopped downwards in a curved arc towards Huai Shi's face. Huai Shi's falling motion suddenly came to a halt. As the end of the cross-shaped spear stabbed out, his entire body moved in a strange arc, as if he were a pole vaulter. In an instant, he was within 3 steps of Luo Xian. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. Smash! Bang! Luo Xian took a step back in astonishment, and then pulled away from Huai Shi. He seemed to be surprised. I almost thought you were a Roman. Luo Xian raised her hand and slowly wiped away the blood flowing out of her nostrils. She asked softly, the footwork just now has a hint of the Inquisition style. Where did you learn it? Can't I be a Roman? Huai Shi asked in Latin. It shouldn't be, right? Luo Xian seemed to be amused by his cover-up. Such a unique mask. I remember your name is Huai Shi, right? Is it the one from Xian High? Huai Shi was stunned. After Xiao Bai came back, he told me a lot of things. Luo Xian tilted her head and looked at him. To be honest, since I've met him, I also want to see what kind of genius would be crazy enough to confess to the White Emperor's son. Huai Shi was stunned for a long time before he sighed helplessly. I have to say that this is a misunderstanding. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Luo Xian's nosebleed face revealed an excited smile again. She asked softly, a duel is a pure thing. There is only victory and defeat, right? In her hand, the mop broke in two, and her arms slowly spread out. The smiling big sister instantly turned into a blood-stained evil spirit. I have to be more serious. With a smile, she suddenly appeared in front of Huai Shi. Then, Huai Shi flew backward. In midair, his pupils shrank in shock. A terrible tear appeared on the clothes on his chest. 2 intersecting bloodstains spread from where the wooden stick had slashed across his chest. It was just a flesh wound, but her speed was frighteningly fast. In an instant it had almost doubled. Footwork? It was that strange footwork. It was similar to the legendary shrinkage, but it was not a camouflage formed by quietly moving forward with the toes and changing positions of the body. Instead, it was close to shortening the distance through that strange rhythm and trampling method. Huai Shi landed on the ground and chopped down with his axe, trying to force Luo Xian away. But Luo Xian's feet once again slid 3 feet to the right out of thin air. After snatching Huai Shi's attack, she closed in on him step by step. Since becoming a sublimator for the first time, Huai Shi encountered an enemy that he could not suppress with his own skills. No, the skills that he had obtained from countless deaths and records were actually suppressed by her skills. Even without the sacred mark. After several exchanges, the two wooden sticks in Luo Xian's hand did not collide with Huai Shi's weapon. Instead, they almost poked Huai Shi's vital parts several times. If she had a sword in her hand, Huai Shi would have been injured. Bang! The change of sword and axe finally gave Huai Shi a chance to cut off a wooden stick in Luo Xian's hand. Her speed slowed down. Although she was a sublimator who had passed the puberty period, without the sacred mark, her physical strength was ultimately insufficient. Luo Xian began to sweat. He took the opportunity to take a step back and stared at her. "Who are you?" "It's an unfamiliar big sister." Luo Xian tilted her head and winked playfully. "Are you only interested in getting to know me now?" Huai Shi did not speak. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. There were 2 shallow wounds on his flesh. But what puzzled him was that the blood did not stop flowing. It even flowed more and more, as if there was a trend of heavy bleeding. "Dripping spring," Luo Xian suddenly said. "Yes? You've already demonstrated your soul ability, so I should at least explain mine, right?" Luo Xian said calmly. "You have also experienced it yourself. The effect is to make people bleed non-stop. So, if we want to fight a protracted battle, my side has the advantage." "Is that so?" Huai Shi stretched out his hand and wiped his chest. The mercury-like liquid metal flowed on the wound, instantly sealing it. Luo Xian was stunned. "What kind of move is this?" She sighed in astonishment. "It's so despicable." "The despicable part is yet to come." Huai Shi shook his head. Under Luo Xian's feet, the green bricks that had been crushed by Huai Shi suddenly cracked. A grayish-black iron wire rope suddenly shot out from it and tightly wrapped around Luo Xian's ankle. It stopped her for a moment. Then, she saw Huai Shi bend down and assume a thrusting posture with an extremely irregular posture. He suddenly stepped forward, and a bright glow burst out from his hand. "Eat my salted fishes, thrusting spike." Soul burning. The surging flames in his chest suddenly burst forth. Following Huai Shi's movements, the cross-shaped spear that was sprinkling dragon blood pierced through the air in an instant. Luo Xian's pupils dilated in an instant. In the instant that she knew it was impossible, her waist weakly leaned back, avoiding Huai Shi's thrusting attack. Her cheek almost brushed against the horizontal branch of the spear, but her feet suddenly separated, and she stood still on the stone floor. The last wooden stick in her hand stabbed towards Huai Shi's face. It was as if she had long since calculated Huai Shi's fastest speed and reaction distance. At the last moment it was too late to deliver this exquisite attack. There was no way to dodge, no way to block, no way to retreat. A fatal blow. Huai Shi's hand only trembled. The tip of the spear trembled. Strands of dragon blood flew out, floating in the air. A thin line landed on her cheek. The sharp wooden stubble suddenly froze in the air. Her strength was exhausted. The moment the azure crown dragon's poison came into contact with her skin, it exploded from the origin substance. An irresistible tiredness and drowsiness rose in Luo Xian's consciousness. She staggered and fell to the ground. Victory and defeat have been decided. Huai Shi put away the spear and lowered his head to look at the powerless Luo Xian on the ground. Her hair had already turned gray. After a brief moment of hesitation, Huai Shi sighed. He took out a syringe gun from his pocket, pressed it against her neck, and pulled the trigger. The poison was relieved. "I controlled the dosage. When we go back, find a good doctor and buy some antidotes to eat. You'll be fine." Huai Shi slowly stood up and said, "Don't worry, the aging brought by this light dosage is only temporary. It won't harm your body." "Are you that kind?" Luo Xian couldn't help but laugh. "I wanted to kill you." "Are you the kind that's especially soft-hearted? You can't bear to kill a pretty girl when you see one? You definitely don't have a girlfriend. Although I don't understand what's going on, you and White Emperor's son are friends, right?" Huaishur sighed. I owe her a big favor, a big, big favor. I've been thinking about how to thank her the next time we meet. I can't say that I'm sorry for killing your friend, right? Ha ha. Luo Xian seemed to be amused by this joke. She narrowed her eyes and said, Then I'll see you in Jinling. You'll participate in this year's Asian rookie competition, right? Not necessarily. Huaishur shook his head and said, To be honest, I'm not that interested. Liar, Luo Xian said. Yeah. You're actually very interested, right? As if she could see through the young man's heart, the sly older sister snorted softly and said, Even if you say that you won't jump off a building, when you meet an opponent your hands will still itch. When you meet more opponents, your heart will itch unbearably. When you meet an enemy that's like iron in their bones, you will be uncontrollably excited. Just like me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a cold expression on your face, would you? Luo Xian stared into his eyes and grinned. You look like you're completely saying that your opponents are a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs, so you're not interested at all. Whatever you say. Huaishur sighed and looked at her one last time. He turned around and walked to the front of the stage. He picked up the jar of tree blood that Crow said, turned around and pushed the door open. When he walked out of the venue, he saw the messenger who had been waiting there for a long time. Contestant, please wait. The six-eyed messenger, who Lu Zhou had met once in the arena, came forward and said politely, A judge has sent you a gift. As he spoke, he raised the box in his hand and held it in front of Huaishur's eyes. Judge! Huaishur was stunned and immediately took 2 steps back. He was afraid that the box contained a curse that would make him eat *T for the rest of his life. Why do you want to give me a gift? Don't worry, this is not a curse or harmful item. It's an extra prize for you. It's a gift from that honorable lord. As he spoke, his 6 eyes looked into the distance. Huaishur followed his gaze and saw a majestic and huge carriage. Dozens of tall black horses were snorting and stomping the ground impatiently. In the carriage, Lu Zhou could vaguely make out the outline. It was the huge shadow sitting at the back of the judge's table. Sensing Huaishur's gaze, it slowly raised its hand and lowered the brim of its hat toward Huaishur as a form of greeting. The leader of a large group from the depths of hell, the Blade of Doom, the ruler of the Death Factory, the honorable sponsor of the Cooking Demon Tournament, the unparalleled Butcher of Heaven. Lord Oink, that's what he said. The servant repeated, Although your cooking skills are not worth mentioning other than creativity, at least, your mask is very interesting. As he spoke, he put the gift in Huaishur's hand, bowed and said goodbye. Then, he left with the carriage and disappeared into the night. That's possible? Huaishur touched the mask on his face and was stunned for a long time. It was somewhat unbelievable. Chapter 172. 3 days later, in the Stone Marrow Building. In the silent basement. No, it should be said that in the basement. Even though this dilapidated basement was only about 10 square meters, Huaishur's physical strength and various tools still took him 3 full days to dig it out. It was only yesterday that he had finished digging. The shoddy air purifier buzzed, slowly sending fresh air down bit by bit. However, it still couldn't disperse the oppressive atmosphere of this place. On the contrary, it made him feel even more annoyed. Under the flickering yellow light, Huaishur wore a mask. He expressionlessly raised the emerald-green syringe in his hand and walked step by step into the corner. In the corner, the tied-up crow was frantically struggling. It trembled and its eyes were filled with panic. To be honest, you've always helped me, but it's really hard to predict that things would end up like this. Huaishur grabbed its neck and stabbed the syringe. The emerald-green poison was slowly pushed into its chest. Rest in peace, my dear friend. In the blink of an eye, the crow quickly shriveled up. It was as if it had been weathered for decades. In the blink of an eye, it was dehydrated and dried up. Only the poisonous origin substance rose from the shriveled corpse like mist and quickly dissipated into the air. Huaishur stared at it with pity. After a long time, He threw the crow's corpse into the trash can in the corner without any pity. It looks like it was a success. He turned around and looked at the crow standing on the table. What do you think? I say, you're just testing a medicine. Can you not do all these fancy things? The real crow stared at him. No, to be honest, Huai sure didn't know if she was really a crow or not, but she looked like one. It's one thing to test a medicine, but you deliberately bought so many crows. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Since I'm going to test the medicine anyway, why not find an animal that can make me a little happier, right? Huai sure stared deeply at the scammer in front of him. As for why the test subject looks like you, I can only say that you're overthinking it. It's just a coincidence. Wow, what a scumbag's tone. You're no longer that innocent and cute little Huai sure. So whose fault do you think this is? While bickering, the two climbed up the ladder to the basement. After closing the door, Huai sure passed through the sterilization room and several sets of sterilization equipment before finally returning to the basement of the Chalcedony Hall. The entrance to the cellar had been strictly separated by layers of physical isolation. It was a biochemical level defense. After returning to the basement, Huai sure's first reaction was to walk to the corner and look at the wooden bottle that was solemnly placed in the center of the thermostat cabinet. Or rather, the tree blood urn. Now, the wood grain and scars on it were completely different from when it was first brought back. The faces had already moved and overlapped with each other. In the end, it formed a three-dimensional face that resembled Huai sure, as if it had been carved out of it. It was already 80% similar. If Huai sure hadn't seen it become like this with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that it was naturally formed. It's about to mature. Crow glanced at the bottle and nodded slightly. Keep watering it every 6 hours. It will probably enter the final stage tonight. Huai sure shrugged, took out a knife, and cut his wrist. Fresh blood with rich negative energy slowly flowed out of the wound and dripped down from his fingers into the tree blood urn. After filling up the cup's groove, it slowly seeped into the wooden texture. In the sound of growth, Huai sure could even see his face on the bottle changing little by little. It was becoming more and more like him. This was what Crow said, a tool that was crucial for Huai sure's advancement. Rather than an advancement, it's better to say that it's an adjustment before the advancement. Crow said mysteriously, You see, sometimes if you want to smuggle from Africa, you have to think of more ways. Smuggle? What smuggle? Huai sure subconsciously became alert. Don't tell me it's a conversion of the system? It's not a conversion of the system, how should I put it? Let me think. Crow pondered for a moment and explained. Now you know that the so-called abyssal system is actually the celestial genealogy established by the Astronomy Society. But in fact, the Astronomy Society is only a processor, not a creator. Do you understand? No miracle comes out of thin air. No matter how powerful the Astronomy Society is, even if they can restart the world more than a dozen times, endlessly subvert the law of conservation of matter, and recreate the universe, they still can't create a real miracle out of thin air. Isn't this a miracle? Huai sure asked. Then, let's have another basic lesson. Crow paused for a moment and said seriously, Strictly speaking, among scholars, the so-called miracle is not a supernatural phenomenon or an incredible thing created by the gods. It specifically refers to the changes above the laws of the world, the instructions and the embryonic form of the phenomenon that directly overflows from the axis of the world. Of course, a large part of it comes from the gods that were born with the world, but there is still a part that doesn't belong to the gods, do you understand? Huai sure understood a little, but he always felt that the topic she was talking about was very strange, as if she was hiding something from him, but it seemed that he was just a little bit away from understanding it, separated by a layer of window paper. The so-called celestial genealogy, which is the abyssal system that has fallen today, is a part of this miracle converted into the source code through the records and recreated. Crow said this and saw that Hao Rin was still confused. She couldn't help but sigh helplessly. Well, I'll say it bluntly. The records and inheritance of the abyssal system are created by humans. For a moment, Huaisher fell into a daze. Created by humans? Yes, if it corresponds to the miracles created by the gods, what is recorded in the celestial genealogy is the traces of humans. For thousands of years, it was obtained by humans, driven by humans, controlled and used by humans, and finally ended by humans and recorded by humans. Crow's tone became complicated. The real meaning of the name celestial genealogy is to abandon the dead gods and create the paradise of heaven with the hands of humans. But because of this arrogance, after the fall, it was called the abyssal system, right? But this is too far away from you. To be honest, I didn't want you to know these things, but now it seems that there is no point in hiding it all the time. You should have the right to know. The crow looked at him deeply. Now you know what the kingdom of heaven really wants to preserve, don't you? In a daze, Huaisher took out the Book of Destiny and looked at its title page in astonishment. After a long time, he looked up stiffly. You mean all the paths of sublimation and advancement of the celestial genealogy? Ah yes. Crow nodded slowly. In addition to the massive number of soul copies, the 77 types of stigmata developed by the celestial genealogy and 9 complete paths of sublimation were all preserved in it until the Republic was completely divided. And with the disappearance of the previous president, all of this disappeared with the fall of the kingdom of heaven. Now, the remnants of the Republic who have fallen into the abyss may still hold a part of it, right? But they are not having a good time now, even worse than Green Sunday. It is basically difficult for them to show up in the present world. After all, they have been listed as the elements of destruction. From the people who protect the world to the existence that destroys the world, I don't know what those guys from the Golden Dawn are thinking. Huaisher's expression was stiff. He did not know what expression to make. He now began to consider whether it was too late for him to pack up his things and find a remote border to hide from the limelight. If he was found to have the Book of Destiny, he would definitely end up in a terrible state. Don't worry. Only you and I know. Besides, you are now just a passerby. How would others know that the Book of Destiny is in your hands? Crow selectively ignored KP and the others and comforted him. Besides, although there are not many people in the celestial genealogy now, there are still quite a few of them. It's normal to have one or two. Besides, even if you don't say that you are a celestial genealogy, no one can tell. Huaisher was already disheartened and did not want to pay attention to her, but this was related to his next advancement. He could only continue to look at her, hoping to hear good news. Presumably, you should have noticed that many times in history, human traces and divine traces often complement each other. The boundary between the two is actually not as clear as the definition above. It's just which side is the focus. Crow paused for a moment and revealed a mysterious smile. This leads to the fact that sometimes the two areas may overlap. Huaisher was stunned for a long time before he reacted and was furious. Isn't this just AF * king traitor? Why are you saying it so harshly? Can an official traitor be called a traitor? Crow said in a trembling voice. This is called the FBI. Huaisher was speechless. Ahem, what were we talking about? Oh traitor. Crow continued. From the beginning of its construction, the kingdom of heaven's genealogy pursued universality and adaptability to the infernal realm. Almost all of the origin codices of the 6 great genealogies were absorbed, and the power of the entire human race was gathered to create a copycat cough cough. The construction was completed. Therefore, all the basic stigmata actually have their corresponding prototypes in the other genealogies. Of the 9 paths of ascension, 5.5 are reflected in the 6 major genealogies today. In other words, although these paths of ascension carry the essence of celestial genealogy, they still have the characteristics and signs of the other genealogies. Why are there only 5.5? Huaisher was curious. Because before half of the path could be completed, the previous president who presided over the work disappeared. Crow shrugged and revealed a mysterious smile. In short, don't worry, as long as you choose the path of ascension well, even if you're a traitor in your bones, no one will be able to tell on the surface. After all, the development of hell had not stopped in these years. Newly discovered stigmata were common, and the various genealogies were constantly collecting and organizing them. Moreover, the Abyss genealogy was just a fallen one, and it was not a taboo. There were still many people wandering around, and no one was against it. Although the existence of the Book of Destiny was more important, as long as Huaishur could keep it a secret, no one would use it against Huaishur. After Crow's explanation, Huaishur finally relaxed a little. But there was nothing he could do. He was already in the car, and it was too late to jump out now. He only cared about what model Crow wanted to modify his illegal car. I've also been thinking about this problem these days. Crow sighed. After all, you'll be active in Dongxia and the surrounding borders for a long time in the future. Considering this point, and the fact that one of the paths of ascension of the Yin soul corresponds to the Dongxia genealogy, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Letting you participate in the culinary demon competition and obtain the urn of tree blood was to prepare for this. Next, we just need to slightly adjust the structure of the Yin soul to the prototype of the path of ascension, and then we can consider the matter of ascension. Hearing her description, Huaishur was completely convinced. So this illegal car of the Yin soul could be modified at any time. No matter what, we'll put on the Dongxia license plate first, is that what you mean? Huaishur sighed helplessly and finally asked, which path of ascension is it? What kind of ascension is it? You should at least tell me, right? Are you that impatient? I wanted to give you a surprise. Crow raised her invisible eyebrows and smiled. In Dongxia, stigmata Yin soul should be called ceremonial soul. People who have this miracle are given the mission of serving death. Its corresponding ascension is called mountain ghost. And in the Celestial Genealogy Catalog, this path of ascension from Dongxia is called Heaven's Inquisition. Heaven's Inquisition? For a moment, Huaishur was confused by this fashionable name, but then, he reacted. Wait a minute. He widened his eyes. Mountain ghost, isn't it a woman? Crow didn't say anything, just looked at him. She smiled. Chapter 173. Mountain Ghost came from Chu Ci, 9 songs. In essence, it was a sacrificial song for the mountain ghost. From this point of view, as an ancient legend, the mountain ghost could be said to have a long history. But the problem was, isn't she a woman? Huaishur widened his eyes. Young man, don't generalize. Crow sighed helplessly. You can't assume that all mountain ghosts are women just because one person wrote that the mountain ghost is a woman, right? After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but mutter, although it does take up a large part of it. You already said that it takes up a large part of it. Huaishur widened his eyes and took out his phone to point at the text. And no matter how you look at it, the mountain ghost should be a kind of god, right? Isn't the lowest level of this kind of sacred mark at the 5th level? The city god is also a god. Do you think that in the eyes of those guys above, they would treat the city god as a human? Crow sneered. I already said, don't generalize. Although in terms of origin, the mountain ghost is indeed endowed with divinity, it is only a demigod with divine blood and a natural soul. But the former is an intern with strong competition, and the latter is simply a temporary worker. Although it is true that the status is noble, at best, it is only at the level of a mountain god. Moreover, most of the time, the mountain ghost refers to the monsters and ghosts in the mountains, not limited to men and women. So, what are you thinking? Are you a cross-dressing boss? After listening to her explanation, Huaishur felt that something was not quite right. But recently, this guy's ability to talk nonsense had improved too quickly, and he couldn't keep up. He could only say that the devil was 10 times stronger than the devil. This woman was simply too evil. Seeing that Huai Shi was frightened, Crow whistled proudly, spread her wings, and flew into the living room. She asked loudly, "Old Fong? Old Fong? What are we eating tonight? Do you still have the big lobsters from the day before? Give me 2 more. Nonsense. You still want to eat lobsters? Where would I have the money to buy lobsters?" Hearing her mention this, Huai Shi thought of his empty bank balance and suddenly became furious. "Tonight I'll cook for you personally. I'll make you a bowl of prodigal woman. I've spent all my money and can only eat instant noodles for you. How about that?" As he said that, he rolled up his sleeves and walked into the kitchen, ready to show off the dark cooking skills he had painstakingly honed. However, he was chased out by Fong Shu, who was fuming with rage. This was the first time. "Young master, the kitchen is a place that brings happiness and joy to people. It doesn't matter if it's a little messy outside, but please don't bring those crooked things home." Old Fong's expression was solemn and serious, and his usual good temper was nowhere to be seen. This was the first time he had expressed his protest and displeasure at Huai Shi's absurd behavior. Huai Shi immediately cowered and shrunk his neck to receive the scolding. Crow nodded proudly on the side. Yes, that's right. Old Fong, teach him well. Children are always learning bad things, just give them a beating. Also, Miss Crow." Old Fong raised his eyebrows and glared at them. "Next time, please don't take the ingredients I marinated in advance to go with wine, and please don't instigate the young master to participate in such vulgar activities again. Otherwise, I will have to reduce your snack quota." "Is this all my fault? I'm so innocent." Crow blinked innocently and was about to say something, but she couldn't help but look away under Fong Shu's gaze. She shrugged guiltily. "I'll be careful next time, okay?" Seeing that the two of them had made a promise, Fong Shu nodded with satisfaction and didn't say much. He turned around and brought out today's dinner from the kitchen. "Today, I stewed hot and sour shrimp soup, made taco with the leftover chicken from yesterday, and served it with cheese and baked potato skins. The main dish is the Aztec-style pan-fried sole fish that I just learned with a little champagne. It's best to have a moderate amount." Uncle Fong took out 2 goblets and poured some for them. He sighed and said, "I have to say that the American diet is quite good, especially this hummus. It's really amazing." "Old Fong, are you an angel?" Crow looked at the table full of high-calorie food and was so moved that she almost shed tears. "It's just a hobby. Please enjoy your meal." Old Fong took 2 steps back and smiled with satisfaction as he watched the two of them eat. He turned around and went back to the kitchen to clean up the tableware. After staying in the cellar for a whole day, Huai Shi was about to go crazy with hunger, but Crow was even faster. She opened her mouth wide like a bottomless pit and gobbled up more than half of the food. She even ordered Huai Shi to help her carry the food that she couldn't reach. Huai Shi looked at her with annoyance and put the sole fish in front of her. "Eat, this is my meat." Then he picked up the champagne and put it next to her. "Drink, this is my blood." Crow froze for a moment and subconsciously looked at the cream in Huai Shi's hand. Huai Shi was silent for a long time and suddenly wanted to bang his head against the wall. With such an unreliable contractor, he probably couldn't count on it for the rest of his life. When he thought of the more than 10 million that he flew out with wings, his heart bled. That was more than 10 million. It was more than 10 million that he could earn by playing the violin for more than 1,000 years. In the end, he had just received the money and had not even warmed it up. He had only used it to purchase a monthly mobile game card. He did not even have the time to indulge in extravagance before it was gone. Gone. It turned into a mess of equipment and a few broken books that were completely used to pay protection fees. His heart was about to break. Last time when he joined the Salvation Society, the game console that Shin Yu promised him had just arrived and he didn't have time to buy the game. It was all gone. "My money," Huaishe put down his knife and fork and looked at the empty plates on the table. They were just like his bank account, and he couldn't help but tear up. Leon, is life always so painful, or is it only like this in childhood? About the money, young master, don't worry. Old Fong, who was washing dishes in the kitchen, suddenly popped his head out and took off his gloves to comfort him. Huaishe turned back in surprise. It's a long story. After pondering for a moment, Uncle Fong explained, in addition to the Huai Shipping Company, the old master also mortgaged all of his pioneering equipment and achievements before he passed away and entrusted the dwarves of the Magic Gold Bank to operate and invest on his behalf. Although Huai Shipping is no longer around, I have reconfirmed this part of the border assets after consulting a few days ago. Speaking of this, Fong Shu suddenly felt a little regretful. Although the value has shrunk a lot due to inflation and other reasons, in addition to the undue principal that can't be withdrawn, the fixed dividends over the years have accumulated to about $40 million. What? Huaishe almost jumped up. 4,000? 10,000? I have applied for it in your name, young master, but according to the old master's will, before the official heir reaches adulthood, only 6% of the working capital can be used annually. As he spoke, he carefully took out a black card from his pocket and placed it in front of Huaishe, excluding the fixed daily living expenses and necessary expenses such as the maintenance and operation of the Chalcedony Hall, a total of $1.4 million. 140? 10,000? $? Huaishe lowered his head and stared blankly at the card with the unfamiliar bank logo in front of him. His mouth couldn't close when he thought of the $40 million waiting for him when he turned 18 next year. Moreover, when the contract expired, there was an even more terrifying amount of principal. He suddenly felt that the world had become strange. It was unbelievable. Huaishe raised his head and held Fong Shu's hand. He couldn't help but cry, "Is this for me?" "Yes." Fong Shu smiled and nodded. Then he reached out and patted the crow's wing that quietly reached over from the side, pushing the black hand that coveted his young master's property to the side. Huaishe stared blankly at the card and only felt dizzy. He suddenly became a pauper, and then became a rich man at the speed of light. The ups and downs of life were too fast. He was a bit carsick. Although his heart was surging with endless cries, in the end, Huaishe couldn't help but swallow. He reached out and returned the card to Fong Shu. "You keep it for me." He was scared. He wasn't afraid of spending it recklessly. He was afraid that before he could spend it all, a shameless woman would spend it all. He had to plan carefully how to spend the $1.4 million. Fong Shu didn't refuse anymore. He carefully put away the black card and nodded. "If you need anything, you can call me at any time. I'm going to take a break." "Take a break." With a foolish smile on her face, Huaishe struggled to get up. She wobbled back to her room as if she was floating. "Silly kid, he's used to being poor." Crow landed on Fong Shu's shoulder and sighed helplessly. "I bet he's wondering if he should get another monthly card." Frugality is a virtue. Old Fong calmly defended his young master, as always. There are so many virtues in the world, but how many can really make people happy? Crow shook his head and sighed. He raised his wings and rested them on Old Fong's shoulder as if he was putting his arm around his shoulder. He took out his phone and showed it to him. "Old Fong, look at this. This is a professional clean workbench from the Cavendish workshop. This wasn't in the budget, Miss Crow." Old Fong casually pressed down her wings that quietly reached into his pocket and said seriously, "Besides, this is the young master's property. I suggest you discuss it with the young master." Crow stared at Old Fong with her watery eyes. Old Fong's expression was calm and unmoved. She sighed dejectedly. All right, I'll try my best to persuade him. Every time I spend a little money, it's like I'm killing him. I bet his mind must be filled with thoughts of how to get his monthly card. I'm sorry I can't help you, but I've prepared another gift for you. With that, Fang Shu bent down, opened the drawer, and took out a small wool vest from between the knitting needles and a few balls of wool. He carefully picked it up with both hands and handed it to Crow. It was a pure white vest with cashmere inside and a crow's head embroidered vividly on the back. I'm sorry to make you laugh. Fang Shu was a little embarrassed. It's getting cold recently, and I can't buy clothes for you on the market, so I made it myself. Old Fang. Crow held the vest for a long time and was moved to tears. You're really an angel, right? It's just a small hobby. The old butler smiled as usual and watched Crow leave. After a long time, he turned around and curiously looked at the game console in the living room. His expression became serious, as if he was facing a great enemy. Games? I don't understand. Are they fun? He scratched his mottled white hair and took out his phone. He somewhat awkwardly searched for related products, but in the end, his eyes were dazzled. Are these all of them in stock? All of them are in stock, dear. The store's reply was quite fast. Fang Shu frowned in distress. Finally, he picked out all the games with naked women on the cover. This, and this, except for these, he said. I want all of them. Give me the deluxe version. On the other side of the screen, the dull seller's head was filled with countless question marks. Chapter 174. At 11:40 in the evening, Huaishir woke up from his dream, as if he had set an alarm clock. He washed his face in his pajamas and pushed open the door to the basement. He went straight down the zip-line to the basement. In the familiar stuffy heat, there was only the buzzing sound of the low-quality air purifier. Is it time yet? Huaishir simply sat on the ground and stared at the big cauldron that was operating silently among the layers of steel in front of him. Or rather, it should be called a rune-sealed refining furnace. This thing that looked like a huge hot water bucket at a banquet in the countryside looked ordinary. Huaishir had spent more than 3 million to buy it, and it was a second-hand product that had been eliminated from a regular alchemy workshop. In Crow's words, a brand-new one could not be bought with 30 million, so he might as well buy a second-hand one that could make do with it. After all, it would be thrown away after one use. A one-time refining furnace. With such extravagance, Huaishir could only hope that it would be worth it. Without the need for a clock, Crow listened to the low echo in the furnace. 5 more minutes. No one spoke in the silence. Apart from the buzzing purifier, there was only the faint sound of water dripping from the furnace. Different from other alchemy cauldrons, this furnace used hydroponics and cold refining method. It used a special solution to fully atomize the materials and then coupled and extracted them at the molecular level. It sacrificed time and efficiency in pursuit of absolute stability and gentleness. In the words of the developers, no matter how flammable and explosive you used it to refine, there would be absolutely no explosion. There was absolutely no leakage, and it was absolutely safe. Huaishir could only hope that what they said was true. Otherwise, once the stuff inside was leaked, not to mention the Stone Marrow Museum, the entire Qingxiu Mountain behind it would be at risk of being contaminated. Most of the things that the Ascendants researched were in this situation. They had to be extremely careful or extremely risky. The slightest mistake would create hell on earth. What was being purified was an out-and-out fierce poison. According to Crow's recipe, using half of Huaishir's blood as the base material, it was like mixing wine. After going through hundreds of processes over 3 days and mixing in various materials, the Yin spirit's blood that was full of pure negative energy was completely transformed into a poison that contained all kinds of primitive malice and dark essence. Regardless of whether it was the most primitive formula for the plague or the essence of the wolfsbane, they were all contained within. Following that were smallpox, dengue fever, Ebola, and other terrifying plagues that had to be properly preserved in various biochemical laboratories. There were even various viruses and bacteria circulating at the borders. Throughout the entire process, Crow displayed a terrifying skill that was enough to win first place in the World Finals of the Demon Chef tournament. Huai Shi still had nightmares when he recalled the scene of him carefully operating these things a few days ago. The things that he made to kill Crow for fun in the past 2 days were completely child's play in front of Crow. They were not even worthy of carrying Crow's shoes. And in Crow's work, 1/3 of it was to create this kind of fierce poison that mutated so fast that it could be counted in seconds. The remaining 2/3, however, were to use various methods to degenerate it, revert it back to its ancestors, preserve its most basic structure, and then force it into the most stable state of hibernation. It was like creating a demon and then forcibly turning it into a baby. If Huai Shi could understand a little bit in the first 1/3, then in the latter part, he had no idea how Crow accomplished such an inconceivable miracle. "And what is it for?" Huai Shi asked, putting in so much effort to build a skyscraper and then bulldozing it, leaving only the foundation behind. Isn't it a bit of a waste of effort? Doesn't this prove that this foundation is enough to support a 10,000 feet tall building? Crow calmly said, as long as it proves this point, it's enough. Huai Shi wanted to ask more, but he heard a crisp echo from the furnace. The long smelting process had come to an end. Go and turn off the air purifier and ventilator first, Crow cautiously said, just in case. Soon, all the electrical appliances were turned off. Huai Shi pulled up the layers of covers, and then completely sealed the last alloy gate, cutting off the connection between the inside and the outside, and the narrow cellar became more and more suffocating. Fortunately, Crow was not a living creature, just a blob of ink, and he could enter the ghost state, minimizing the need for oxygen to avoid the fate of suffocation. And as the layers of furnace doors were opened, in the midst of the sudden dispersal of atomized liquid ammonia and all kinds of liquid vapors, a test tube with sparkling water droplets slowly rose from the core. In the test tube, about 20 milliliters of blood had been purified to the point that it was colorless. It looked like a new type of normal saline, ordinary and unremarkable. In the cold liquid ammonia, it maintained a liquid state, but once it returned to normal temperature, it would quickly vaporize. At that time, the endless demons with infinite variables would occupy every corner of the cellar. If no one took the initiative to catalyze it, in about a few days, tens of thousands of viruses would erupt from it, as if they were rushing to the market, and completely turn this place into a forbidden zone. Are you ready? Crow looked back at him. Huai Shi subconsciously took a deep breath, held his breath, and then slowly nodded. He carefully picked up the tweezers, and then opened the box beside him. Inside the box was one of the few prizes he had seen in the lounge. It was an ordinary-looking broken bowl with a handful of ashes in it. That was the gift he received from one of the judges of the cooking demon competition. Although he did not know what was going on, his taste in choosing a mask was very good. In Crow's words, it was something that was not very useful. Although it was not in the plan, since he had encountered it, it was a pleasant surprise to be able to use it. Although it looked like a bowl, there seemed to be some kind of law imposed on it. No matter how he shook it in his hand, the ashes in the bowl would not fall out of the bowl. Even if it was upside down, it would still hover in the air in the bowl. It was as if it was bound inside. But this binding was extremely fragile. It could be broken with just a pair of tweezers. When Huai Shi's tweezers reached into it, countless ashes suddenly collapsed inwards as the tweezers closed. In the end, it became a speck of dust that was caught in the middle of the tweezers. The almost endless resentment and anger condensed into a single point. It was the essence of darkness that far surpassed the ashes of calamity. It was enough to throw Huai Shi's negative energy hundreds of thousands of streets away from the crystal of calamity. Huai Shi could not imagine what kind of fate and encounter would cause such a large scale of resentment and despair to remain after being burned to ashes. And now, as the tweezers moved and loosened, the speck of ash silently fell into the test tube. It merged with the virus that would cause endless trouble in the future. There was no resistance or abnormality, nor was there any rejection or resistance. The two merged as one, as if they had been born this way. As a result, the unconscious virus seemed to have been bestowed with a dark soul. Gray ripples appeared on its surface as countless colors rapidly changed. In the end, it turned into a pitch black that even the scorching sun could not penetrate. And so, this is how it is. Crow quickly closed the lid of the test tube and let out a long sigh, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Even though this kind of thing does not require much skill, doing it in this kind of environment without any protection is incredibly exciting. If there is even the slightest mistake, your house will explode. Can we find another place next time? Huaishe wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. There are so many places on Qingxiu Mountain with no one around. Why did it have to be my house? Don't forget, the stone marrow hall is equivalent to a semi-finished spirit coffin. With the old room here, it is like having a spirit coffin to suppress the spirit veins and spirit veins. At the very least, the purity of the origin substance can be guaranteed. Do you think that alchemy is like treating someone to a meal, where you can just find a random place to set up a table and do it? Even if you are treating someone to a meal, you don't have to be so careless, do you? Crow carefully placed the test tube into a container covered in dry ice and nodded in satisfaction. Now we can begin to evolve the Yin spirit. As she spoke, she pointed at the mattress in the middle of the cellar. Her tone became charming, as if she was a late-night female broadcaster. All right, quickly lie down. Time is precious, let's not waste it. Huaishe rolled his eyes. As expected, expecting this woman to be more serious was a waste of time. Huaishe lay down on his back and leaned against the pillow. He rolled up the sleeves of his pajamas and skillfully wrapped himself in rubber tape. Then, he flicked his pale forearm and examined the protruding veins on it. Come on. He closed his eyes, not daring to look again. Don't take pity on me just because I'm a delicate flower. Crow was stunned for a long time. After a long time, she said with some embarrassment, Sorry, that joke is so old that I didn't react in time. Just hurry up, okay? Huaishe was completely powerless. He lay flat on the ground, waiting for Crow's next transformation. If he had to explain it in a concise manner, it would be that he was preparing to perform a hemodialysis. That's right, this was Crow's plan, a shortcut for Huaishe to evolve from a Yin spirit to a mountain ghost. The mountain ghost sacred mark in the kingdom of heaven was essentially the same as the Yin soul. It was said that the mountain ghost sacred mark was a miracle that was once confused as a god. Their innate ability lay in the fact that they could spread their attributes to their surroundings. The only difference was the medium through which they were created. Yin spirits were created through origin substances, and after evolving, mountain ghosts would be able to obtain vitality that was completely compatible with plants in addition to their original origin substance. In reality, this innate ability was quite suitable for growing flowers and plants. However, unlike the druids' tree shepherds, mountain ghosts could not cause plants to grow or wither out of thin air. Instead, they could obtain and extract vitality through the circulation of vitality. To put it simply, after evolving, Huaishe would also obtain an affinity with plants, as well as the ability to imbue and extract vitality from plants to a certain extent. He was basically an expert at growing plants. Originally, evolving wasn't that simple, but with the urn of tree blood in hand, he could save himself a long and painful process. He could obtain the best results in the fastest and most effortless way. And during this process, Crow suddenly had an idea. He wanted to give Huaishe some extra ingredients. Chapter 175. As a relic that would only occasionally appear in the depths of hell above level 20, the urn of tree blood itself had a strange effect that went beyond common sense. Usually, it was used by alchemists as a one-time refining cauldron. It was more high-end and convenient than the second-hand goods Huaishe bought. When making some potions in the field of plants, it had a miraculous effect of almost perfect grafting. Under the premise of fully retaining the characteristics of the two materials, the potion was endowed with terrifying vitality. Although it would generally turn into a plant after drinking it, if it was used on plants, it would have a perfect effect. If it was even more extravagant, it was likely to be used as a flower pot in important cultivation projects of rare species. And if it was used as a dialysis device, this terrifying vitality would be directly injected into Huaishi's body, directly giving him the attribute of plant affinity. It would also turn him into a vegetable. However, with the foundation of the stigmata spirit, Huaishi did not have to worry about this consequence. With the supplementary materials for advancement, advancing to a mountain ghost would be a piece of cake. At that time, not only would he collect this surging vitality, but he would also directly raise Huaishi's starting point. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Crow, on the other hand, had the idea that it was New Year's Eve, people were dead, people were here, it was not easy, he was still a child, it was for his own good, it was fine as long as he got used to it, and so on. He planned to go all the way and create a big mess. Anyway, his poison resistance was so high that he would not die for a while. It was better to just put in some poison, after all, the core of mountain ghosts and spirits was sharing. After the halo of fear formed by the ash fog, it was not a big deal to have another halo of plague. It was just that the type of plague needed to be carefully selected. It needed to be strong, but it could not directly kill Huaishi. It needed to have growth, but the starting point could not be too low. After receiving a gift from the Butcher of Heaven, Crow simply chose to do it himself. It was convenient and fast. Well, it was just a risk that, if it failed, his whole family would spiral into the sky. It was completely not itchy when there were too many lice. Anyway, he had done so many things, so it was not a big deal, right? After Huaishi lay down, the crow flapped its wings, and an invisible force tore open a new pack of infusion tubes and inserted them into the blood vessels on Huaishi's arm. The other end, under the crow's gaze, was wedged deep into the tree blood urn. On the wooden shell, the face that was exactly the same as Huaishi's opened its eyes in an instant. With the infusion of blood, the eyes turned scarlet and moved nimbly. Its expression was stunned, and its lips opened and closed silently. "Oh my God, where am I?" Crow read Huaishi's words from his lips and helplessly shook his head. The origin substance is flowing normally, which means that it has already become a part of your body through your blood. Lie down properly and don't move around. She flapped her wings, and Huaishi, who was spasming on the mattress, lay down again. The viscous blood slowly rose from the bottom of the tree blood urn, bringing with it a hint of green. Just as it was about to fill up, another flexible tube was inserted into its left side. The connected dialysis machine began to operate with a low hum, extracting Huaishi's blood from the urn and injecting it into Huaishi's body. Huaishi felt like he was about to explode again. Why did it have to use so much blood? Just as this boundless vitality poured into his body like a tidal wave, Huaishi opened his mouth to roar, but he felt his face quickly go numb. When he reached out to touch it, the feeling from his fingertips was no longer the softness of flesh, but rather the roughness of wood with a large amount of fiber. He saw that on his hands, as the blood vessels protruded, the wood grains were quickly spreading. "It's about to begin." Crow lowered her head and stared at Huaishi, who was slowly transforming. "Hold on a little longer, don't go crazy." Huaishi could not help but want to laugh. This degree of pain was completely common, why did he still need to endure it? Soon, he found that what was more unbearable than the pain was the numbness and itchiness in his limbs and bones, and what was more terrifying than this were his wildly growing fingers and the aerial roots that extended from between his fingers. He was stunned and looked at Crow. His hardened vocal cords vibrated with difficulty and he said, "I seem to have become a tree." Then he turned into a tree. A human-shaped tree. Ignorant and unaware, he maintained a look of shock. Click. As the flash lit up, the sound of the shutter spread, leaving Huaishi's dazed and frightened face on Crow's screen. If there is someone in Shi Mountain, who is brought to Shi Mountain, she raised her wings, opened the test tube in the dry refrigerator, and poured all the pitch-black virus into the tree blood urn. I wish you a good dream, young man. Along with the blood that gradually turned dark green, endless viciousness and despair poured into Huaishi's body. However, Huaishi could not feel anything. He was just a vegetative person, like a plant. The feeling of becoming a plant was unexpectedly strange, so strange that Huaishi could not help but begin to think. What organ did he use to think? Did he lose his brain? After losing control of his body, Huaishi's soul lay in the cage-like body, curiously looking around at the darkness, and then looking at his own body. Is the soul also in human form? The light that is not spherical is a little surprising. He curiously fiddled with himself, sometimes stretching himself, sometimes squashing himself, sometimes forming an S, and sometimes, after being silly, he began to think about the reality. Then, what should he do now? Advance? It seemed that this was not under his control. Since he had become a plant, should he just wait and see? Then, should he fight the zombies? Then, there must be zombies in the endless darkness where time seemed to have lost its meaning. He seemed to be floating in the universe, with nothing to do except think. So he began to think. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Why does the world exist? What is the value of life? What is the meaning of living? Also, what did Crow do behind his back? If a ship was constantly replacing parts during a long voyage, when the last part was returned, what would he eat for dinner? If there was a group of screaming dead children tied to the left track in front of the train, and a middle-aged man who scratched his feet and talked loudly on the phone in public was tied to the right track in front of the train, how could he let the train drift and crush both sides? If the rancher and the Green Sun people fell into the water at the same time, how could he find a way to throw Crow into the water? In the midst of all kinds of problems that were destined to be unsolvable, Huaishi began to think for a long time without end. At first, there was anger and fear, meaningless resistance and resistance, struggling with illusory hope, and finally, he completely sank into the darkness in numbness. In the absolute darkness, all of this seemed to be endless. Huaishi forgot where he was going, where he was, and who he was. He seemed to have really become a tree. He felt the roots slowly but quickly growing, deeply rooted in the soil. Countless curved branches grew out of his arms that had lost their contours, filling every inch of the space in the cellar and passing through the soil and stones. Growing. Just like that, it grew silently. Slowly and firmly, it extended toward the ground. When the first bud broke out of the soil, Huaishi felt the tiny warmth of the sun shining on him. For some reason, he suddenly felt a heartfelt joy. It was the sweet happiness when life found itself still existing. Even if the world was so cruel, even if there were insects and ants gnawing on his limbs, he was still alive, growing tenaciously and embracing the sun. Synthesizing chlorophyll is really happy. He bathed in the sun and thought so from the bottom of his heart. As for Huaishi, who is Huaishi? Who cares? Growing up is happy as long as it's happy. So, he forgot the alternating dawn and dusk, day and night. He was immersed in the joy of growing up and focused on spreading the countless roots from the ground. He pushed away the soil, drilled through the cover, sank into the underground river, probed into the nest, and took root in the cold city between concrete and steel bars. Without him realizing it, his root system had already spread out several hundred kilometers like a giant net. It wriggled underground and connected to the root system that was connected to the countless trees under Qingxiu Mountain. It then merged into the endless moss in the dark sewer under Xian Hai. With that as the end point, it connected to the countless lush flowers and trees. Countless lives gathered into one here. Many became one. Countless fine tremors intertwined into a surging pulse. When the fine tremors set off by the unloved plants overlapped, it formed a low rumble that seemed to cover the entire mortal world. It was a whisper that no one could hear, a whisper that no one knew, a ballad that no one could listen to. It was like the low, lingering sound of a cello. It echoed in his ears. For a moment, Huaishe heard the sound of his soul breaking. It was like the germination of a seed. In the long wait and gestation, the miracle that belonged to the soul flowed out from it. Like water flowing naturally, the miracle that served death embraced this majestic life and happily merged with it. The magnificent light that was tempered from death lit up from the wooden body and flowed in every song. At that moment, Huaishe finally jumped out from the manifestation of the roots and the body. He smashed the shackles and his soul was free. Like the wind, he jumped nimbly from countless flowers and plants, shuttling through every place. He felt the walking of the beasts and the blowing of the wind under the shade of the trees, the sound of wild cats crying and playing, and the countless swaying flowers and plants under the starry sky. He caught a glimpse of the turbulent flow of people, the passers-by who were in a hurry after work, the children wandering in the streets, the old people watering the flowers and plants, and the laughter that echoed in the green field. Then, Huaishe saw the slender back of the girl and the coat that was slowly taken off. It was Fu Yi. A bolt of lightning suddenly flashed through Huaishe's mind, making him seem to recall something. In the green plant in the corner of the boudoir, Huaishe looked at the girl with her back to him in astonishment. He watched as she responded to her mother's words loudly, closed the door, threw her coat on the hanger, and then took off her white t-shirt, exposing her smooth back and the slender bandage across her white skin. A pink bow. Oh my God, so exciting! Huaishe opened his mouth wide in astonishment and struggled forward. The pot of green plants struggled to move forward an inch, as if to find the best viewing position. Then, he saw the green dress fall on the carpet. The slender calf wrapped in black stockings was lifted and deeply sank into the plush carpet. Huaishe widened his eyes and held his breath. At that moment, an invisible gravitational force suddenly burst forth, pulling his soul back. Chapter 176. Don't wait a moment, just a moment. Huaishe subconsciously reached out to grab something, but he was cruelly pulled away, as if an invisible rope was pulling him. In an instant, he swept past the bustling streets and the surging crowds, returning from the countless steel forests. But a crisp sound. In the cellar, a crack suddenly appeared in the wooden shell, and a vaguely vexed shout sounded from within. Feeling the heavy restraints, Huaishe subconsciously struggled. At that moment, he finally felt himself. At the same time, the huge network of roots that spread under the 9 lands suddenly shook, and extracted an insignificant amount from the sea of life that was gathered from countless plants. Thus, Huaishe returned from nothingness. The wooden shell cracked, revealing his pale face. Huaishe subconsciously raised his hand and felt an almost endless amount of life force being transmitted from the roots, creating a new arm from nothingness. His 5 fingers spread open, and his fingernails slowly grew out. He subconsciously breathed, and in an instant, the network of roots buried deep under the ground suddenly contracted and withered. Bright life force flowed out from within, creating a brand new lung and body. Huaishe took a step forward and heard the sound of countless roots rotting and contracting. Amidst the continuous shattering sounds, the naked young man had already walked out from the withered trees. Behind him, the huge roots that once covered the entire city silently lost their color, cracked, and collapsed into rotten wood. In the end, they collapsed into dust. Huaishe stood in the darkness, stunned. Tree sap with a faint green color slowly dripped from his waist-long black hair. He lowered his head and looked at his hands and naked body, only to find that his pale skin, which had lost its color after becoming a ghost, had regained a faint rosy color. And just under his skin, in the rippling blood vessels, there was a thick dark green color. He seemed to have regained his life. He had returned from the underworld. Crow stood on the shelf in front of him, looking at the stunned youth, and smiled. "How do you feel?" Huaishur slowly raised his head, and 2 lines of tears fell from his face. Then, he stretched out his hand, grabbed Crow's neck, and shook it angrily. "I was so close," Huaishur cried out in agony. "I almost King saw it. Why didn't you wait a little longer?" "It's not easy for everyone to live. Please don't record anything in the Book of Destiny that will cause everyone to become 404, okay?" Crow looked at him with disappointment. "Besides, you found your self-consciousness by peeping at a female classmate changing clothes. Young man, you're really something. It's a loss for all mankind that Director Fu didn't collapse." Huaishur was speechless, but, for some reason, when Crow mentioned Director Fu, he couldn't help but want to give the middle-aged man a thumbs up. "Your daughter's body." But if he said it out, he would die. Well, they would be crushed into dregs by the steel torrent of guns, short cannons, tanks, and missiles of the Special Affairs Division. He shook his head with some lingering fear and didn't dare to think about it anymore. Then, he turned to study his current body. Is this the second stage? He felt the surging vitality in his body, and tried to move his body. He felt that the original upper limit of the Een Soul had disappeared without a trace, and he could easily reach a high speed that he couldn't reach in the past. His strength had also increased, although the increase in speed was probably far from it. What surprised him even more was that his body coordination had improved qualitatively. Huaishur tried to throw 8 or 9 beakers in the air in succession. When he stretched out his index finger, the falling beakers fell from the air into an extremely dangerous pile from his fingertip. The exquisite combination of mechanics piled them up from the duckweed foundation into a tower. When Huaishur shook his fingertips slightly, he saw the waist of the tower begin to bend, and slowly rotate with the subtle tilt of his finger. In the end, as Huaishur let go of his hand, it fell to the ground. It piled up into the shape of a pyramid. Huaishur still hadn't recovered from the shock. In that moment just now, he almost felt that his limbs had spread over the beakers, and he could sensitively perceive the movement of every fulcrum and center of gravity. He could easily grasp the complicated changes in his hand. What was more surprising was, "Hey, catch!" The crow's voice interrupted Huaishur's thoughts, and a piece of iron was thrown into Huaishur's hand. Huaishur subconsciously reached out, but the moment his fingertips were about to touch the iron, he saw a blazing electric light burst from the iron. From a thin line, it pierced towards Huaishur's fingertips. In an instant, Huaishur pulled back his hand, but his fingertips still felt a burst of needle-like pain. But what surprised him was that in that very short moment just now, he could almost see how the electric light burst from the iron grew inch by inch, slowly moving in the air, and finally wrapping around his fingertip. Not just that. His reaction speed. If it had been before, he probably wouldn't have been able to react in time, or even realize what was going on before he was hit. But now, he actually had time to react. Even compared to the speed of thunder, it was still so slow that it was close to nothing. But going from nothing to something was still a major breakthrough. From the second level onwards, the soul of the sublimator will begin to become active. After ignoring the natural limits of the body, the reaction speed will be greatly enhanced. Sublimators like you, who specialize in strengthening the nerve reflexes, will even directly advance to the level of soul reflexes. Isn't that great? Huaishur curled his lips and shook his head. I can't dodge even if I react, what's the use? Are you stupid? You can't dodge a bullet, but can't you dodge someone pulling the trigger? The crow looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. In a duel, being faster by just a little bit is being faster. You're only at the second level, not the 5th level. Do you want to become the Flash or something? Don't I still want to improve? Huaishur slowly moved his body. Originally, he was a little afraid that he wouldn't be able to adapt to the sudden increase in attributes, but he didn't expect that his body didn't show any signs of losing control at all. Soon, as he waved his hand, grass seeds quickly sprouted from the soil under his feet, which had been plowed by the broken tree trunks. In an instant they grew into a green carpet as tall as his knees. Huaishe felt that this was far from his limit. If he tried his best, he could turn the grass on his entire football field into half a person's height. It was just that would cause him to fall into a weak state similar to blood loss. Following his will, the countless branches and leaves in the thick grass quickly became sharp. From afar they looked like clusters of small knives. Although the specific lethality had yet to be developed, the mountain ghost's talent was unexpectedly cool. Whether he was strong or not was a matter of a patch, but whether he was handsome or not was a matter of a lifetime. Apart from the fact that he wasn't quite used to the green color, he was very satisfied with everything. Very quickly, he noticed that his waist-length hair was still stained with sticky tree sap. It was wet, making it difficult for him to get used to it. Huaishe pulled out his sacrificial knife and wanted to cut it directly, but as he was cutting it, he discovered that the hair's toughness was unexpectedly strong. Even with the sharpness of his origin blade, Huaishe still had to use a lot of force to cut it. The severed hair fell to the ground, and as if it had taken root in the soil, it quickly expanded and grew, becoming a lush bramble. That works? Huaishe's movements paused. Just as he was sighing in amazement, he discovered to his astonishment that the hair he had cut off had actually grown back. It had returned to its original waist length. Not a hair more, not a hair less. It was as if it had been fixed in place, stubbornly maintaining its current length. No matter how Huaishe cut it, it wouldn't compromise. Huaishe only resentfully put down the knife, when he felt that the blood supply to his brain was insufficient and he was beginning to feel dizzy. Fine, it's this long. On the bright side, at least he didn't have to go to the barber shop. Do you want to see your current appearance? Crow had a smile that made Huaishe feel uneasy. He flapped his wings, and a water mirror appeared out of thin air. The light source that had been cut off above his head lit up again, illuminating Huaishe's face. Huaishe was stunned in place. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. Benefiting from the replenishment and enhancement of a large amount of vitality, Huaishe's originally malnourished and pale face also became a bit rosy. He was no longer gloomy, and it could be said that he had bid farewell to the cold and handsome Gothic cowherd style. Although his essence was still mainly negative energy, at least he wouldn't be as dead as when he was at the original ghost stage, when he was suppressed by the light attribute's sacred mark. But now, in the mirror, Huaishe saw a nightmarish mirror image between his drooping black hair. This. He pointed sluggishly at the familiar face in the mirror, almost screaming, "Who is this sissy?" Crow looked at him with pity. Huaishe stared blankly at the pair of sparkling eyes and the neutral oval face in the mirror, as well as the soft facial features. He subconsciously touched his crotch. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the thing is still there. When he came to his senses, he couldn't help but look at Crow. He took out his knife and axe with both hands, wondering how to stew this woman into a pot of black chicken soup. "Don't slow down." Crow dodged back. "You see, I already said that most of the mountain ghosts are female. I reminded you, and you're not a sissy now, just a little bit more neutral. Just treat it as if you've added a skin-grinding filter. Besides, don't you think that you're more attractive to girls now? To be honest, it's not bad to change from a Gothic style to AJ style." "Then why are you dodging?" Huaishe asked gloomily. "Come here, I won't do anything to you. I'm not afraid of you doing anything to me. Anyway, I'm just a blob of ink, and I'm not afraid of being chopped by you." With that, Crow shrank back a little more, looking cautious. "But you're poisonous now, equivalent to a walking source of infection in human form. I have to keep a distance no matter what." "What the hell?" Huaishe looked down at his feet in astonishment. In the grass that he had grown, a patch of colorful mushrooms had grown out without him noticing. The size of the mushrooms looked very pleasing, and he knew that they would taste good. It was very appetizing. This was bad. The halo of pestilence seemed to be unable to be turned off. Chapter 177. The next day, in Ai Ching's office. Behind the desk, the girl rested her chin on her hand and looked at Huai Shi behind the desk. So, what's with your disguise? It's a long story, Huai Shi said in a muffled voice. His voice definitely couldn't be clear with the helmet covering his face. In fact, it wasn't just his face that was covered. He was wrapped in a layer of airtight clothes from head to toe. In addition to the scratch-resistant layer on the surface, there was also a filler layer with liquid latex flowing in the middle and an innermost sealing layer. It was almost a biochemical-level protection. Not an inch of skin was exposed on his body. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He was stopped by the police several times on the street. If it weren't for the sign of the Special Affairs Department, he wouldn't have been able to walk to Ai Ching's office. It's a long story? Ai Ching raised her eyebrows. Then make it short. Huai Shi hummed and hawed for a long time, not knowing how to explain. I'm sick. Yes. Ai Ching nodded expressionlessly. I can see that. Huai Shi couldn't speak of his suffering. In fact, he was really sick. Even now, as long as he breathed, countless strains of bacteria would spread from his skin and lungs into the air. Due to the excessive vitality after the advancement, the talent of the mountain ghost was activated 24 hours a day. Not only did he plant grass wherever he went, but even the fog of calamity and the newly obtained plague halo were also spreading around with his breathing. If he didn't care, after sitting in public for 10 minutes, not many people would be able to breathe and stand. He didn't even need to be sent to the ICU. If ordinary people encountered the border flu, they would die. Not only was he responsible for killing people, but he also provided a one-stop service to grow grass on the grave. Thinking of this, he had a headache, but there was nothing he could do about it. It shouldn't be said that it wasn't a bad thing. Instead, it was a benefit. Now, it was equivalent to him being energized 24 hours a day. If he wanted to solve it, he could only work slowly. When he got used to the mountain ghost's holy mark and digested it, it would be fine. But it was hard to say how long it would take. It could take as long as half a month or as short as 2 days. No one could say for sure. Therefore, he could only go out like this. There was no point in keeping the matter of his advancement a secret. Moreover, Ai Ching was his superior, so there was no reason for him to keep it a secret. He might as well confess. I've advanced. Ai Ching was stunned for a moment, as if she was shocked by his speed and honesty. Then, she slowly nodded. If that's the case, then it explains why you disappeared for half a month. Other than that, she didn't say anything else and didn't even ask any other questions. Mountain Ghost. Huai Shi added. Ai Ching is silent for a long time. She is stunned. Judging from the name, is it the divine mark of the Dongxia country? Yes. Huai Shi nodded. She looked at Huai Shi suspiciously for a long time and asked tentatively, How's the weather in Southeast Asia? What's Southeast Asia? I don't know. Huai Shi was halfway through his sentence when he suddenly remembered a certain transgender country. His face under the mask immediately turned green. I'm a man. Pure. 24K. Pfft. Ai Ching shook her head regretfully, which made Huai Shi dumbfounded. What are you regretting? I didn't change my gender, so why are you so upset? The office was suddenly filled with a persecuted aura. Huai Shi couldn't scratch his head through the helmet, so he could only sigh helplessly and try to bring the topic back on track. After coughing twice, he asked seriously, What's going on? You're going on a business trip again. Emergency mobilization. Ai Ching couldn't help but curl her lips in disdain. She said, Actually, it's not that urgent, it's just a formality. But in order to be in time for Prince's study, we need to get to Jinling before 6 o'clock in the evening. After we get there, You probably have another mission. She showed the notice from Jinling and pushed the wheelchair out from behind the desk. She then asked, "Did you bring everything? If you're talking about the anti-chemical equipment, it's all here." Huaishur pointed at the overly large suitcase next to his chair and sighed helplessly. "Then let's go." Ai Qing seemed to be suppressing her unhappiness. She said gloomily, "I really hope this trip will be quick." Outside the window, the helicopter roared and landed in the backyard amidst the hurricane, crushing the carefully taken care of flowers and plants in the garden into a pile of mud. "Are you in a hurry? When you have a family waiting to drag you down, don't complain about time passing too fast." Ai Qing went silent for a moment. She looked down at the bulging blue veins on the back of her hand with a gloomy expression. She said, "I have a bad feeling." 3 hours later, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in the lounge of the Jinling Astronomical Society branch, Huaishur suddenly had a bad feeling. Originally, he thought that the Astronomical Society branch would be built in a mysterious area where people rarely went, or that they had to go through some kind of ceremony to enter. He didn't expect this huge office building to be built in the bustling business district of Jinling. There was an entire building in the old street area where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. The sign of the International Astronomical Society was hanging on the wall. People came and went, and one could go up by elevator. There was nothing special about it. No, for Huaishur, he should have come down. He had arrived by helicopter. Because the branch did not set up workstations for the staff of other departments, Huaishur could only stay in the huge lounge before he officially went through the registration process. Although it was called a lounge, it was similar to a bar or a coffee shop. The environment was elegant, the atmosphere was warm, and more importantly, the drinks were free. Milk tea, smoothies, alcohol, all. Huaishur wanted to take off his helmet and take advantage of it. He couldn't even drink milk tea with this broken helmet. He could only look at other people. So angry. This time, the emergency mobilization of Jinling seemed to be quite urgent. It could be said that most of the Southeast staff had already arrived. At a glance, there were about 70 to 80 people, and they seemed to be very familiar with each other. They sat in groups of 3 to 5 chatting while waiting for the transfer orders. Old Xiao and Yujun didn't seem to be here yet. Huaishur could only sit alone in the corner. He didn't even order a drink. He just stared at the green plants on the table in front of him in a daze. His strange appearance attracted a lot of people's attention. After all, it was rare to see a fully armed staff in a place like this. After a lot of people saw Huaishur's appearance, they began to guess which department Huaishur was from. He looked like someone from the Biochemical Defense Force, and he had a cold aura. Huaishur's heart was bitter. Through the black mask, he pretended not to notice other people's curious expressions. He quietly swallowed his bitterness and continued to act cool. Fortunately, someone quickly walked up and took the initiative to talk to him. "Hello, brother. Let's get to know each other. I'm Chun Yen, a member of the branch." The person who came up was a young man. Although he had a slightly punk mohawk hairstyle, when he smiled, it was full of cheerfulness that was not annoying. He pointed at the seat opposite Huaishur and asked, "Can I sit here?" "Feel free." On the sofa, the sharp helmet slightly nodded. There was a hint of hoarseness in the dull voice. It sounded cold and indifferent. In fact, Huaishur was about to die from boredom. It was so hot. He wanted to blow on the air conditioner. Chun Yen was taken aback by the sudden pretentiousness. However, the faint sense of intimidation that Huaishur exuded made him not doubt the authenticity of her pretentiousness at all. He just treated it as a strange habit of not being used to interacting with others. It was understandable. Chun Yen also knew that these special department people had to deal with all kinds of terrifying threats all year round. In order to keep it a secret, they often rarely communicated with others. It wasn't that they were cold. After a warm smile, he sat down and chatted with Huaishur. He didn't rashly ask for Huai Shi's name and job. He just chatted. Soon, Huai Shi's reaction convinced him of his judgment. Soon, the two became familiar with each other. It could be seen that Chen Yen was a warm-hearted person. He also introduced a few friends to sit and chat with them. Huai Shi successfully extricated himself from the awkwardness. It was better to be lively. Although the style was still weird, at least it was not as eye-catching as before. Oh, since it's your first time in Jinling, you should take a good look around. There are a lot of good places in the branch. After I change shifts, I can show you around. During the conversation, Chen Yen said enthusiastically to Huai Shi, a lot of workshops have opened branches here. There are a lot of good products. Even if you don't buy, you can still make a profit by looking. Okay. Huai Shi was also quite interested in this. Then let's go together. During the conversation, Huai Shi's movements suddenly paused. He heard the voices of the people sitting next to him. Hey, did you guys hear? The member named Luo Ming paused for a moment. He lowered his voice and said mysteriously, recently, there's a pervert among the members named Huai Shi. He likes to confess to girls who are just over 14 years old. What the hell? Huai Shi was stunned. More than that. Chen Yen snorted coldly. I heard that guy is so daring. He dares to harass minors in front of Mystic Bird. It seems that he is now on the blacklist of the Social Security Bureau. A lot of people from the Social Security Bureau said that they will break his legs if they see him. Really? The others were in disbelief. Breaking his legs is already a light punishment. Someone's expression became gloomy. If I catch someone who embarrassed our astronomy association, I will definitely beat him to death. Yeah. The rest of the people were filled with righteous indignation. Count me in. Count me in too. Break his legs. No way. Behind the mask, Huai Shi was trembling and Kitty was crying. It was just a slip of the tongue. Why is my reputation like a rapist? I think, Huai Shi mustered up the courage to speak. In an instant, everyone looked over. They were serious and careful. They wanted to listen to the masked boss's opinion. However, when Huai Shi looked at the murderous faces, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. After a long time, he could only say, yeah, so perverted. Seeing that the indifferent masked boss was angry, the others immediately nodded in agreement and cursed, what a beast! Scum! Scum! Beast in human clothing! Pigs and dogs! I'm not. Behind the mask, Huai Shi had already seen his social death. He just wanted to cover his face and cry. Why did it become like this? The first time he came to Jinling and the first time he met so many friendly colleagues. These two happy things overlapped just as he was silently crying. He suddenly heard a voice behind him. It was so gentle and polite, but it was as if it came from hell. Is Mr. Huai Shi here? Chapter 178. May I ask if Mr. Huai Shi is here? A staff member holding a document bag asked softly. What did you say? In an instant, 7 or 8 staff members around the table turned to look at her. Their cold gazes made the female clerk's face turn pale, especially the strange person who wore a strange helmet and didn't even show his face. Even though she couldn't feel his gaze, the female clerk could still feel the deep resentment in his eyes. She almost couldn't stand still. May I ask if Mr. Huai Shi is here? She plucked up her courage and asked shakily. It's said that a Mr. Huai Shi is coming to register today. I've asked other places, and this is the only place left. In an instant, everyone looked at each other. Huai Shi? In the silence, there was suddenly the sound of an angry slap on the table. Bang! Huai Shi raised his head proudly and said sternly, We don't have that kind of scum here. Well said. Luo Ming added, Don't worry, he won't be coming today. If he comes, I'll definitely beat him to death. Everyone nodded in agreement. Only Chen Yen looked at Huai Shi in confusion, as if he didn't understand. Soon, the frightened female clerk turned and ran away with tears in her eyes. Huaisher felt even more guilty, but at the same time, he was filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. "I'm sorry, miss. I'll definitely apologize to you later." He breathed a sigh of relief and felt cold sweat seeping from his back. Before he could calm down, he heard old Zhao's hearty laughter. "Hey, Huaisher, why are you still here?" He walked in from the door and walked straight toward Huaisher. He asked curiously, "Why did I see the clerk who came to register with you leave crying?" As he spoke, he slapped Huaisher's shoulder hard. Slap! It was as if he had cut the rope on the guillotine. In that instant of dead silence, under everyone's astonished gazes, Huaisher swallowed hard and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, you've got the wrong person." "Ha ha ha, you're kidding me." Old Zhao grinned and pointed at Huaisher's helmet proudly. "If Inspector AI hadn't told me what you look like now, I would have been fooled by you." At that moment, under many strange gazes, Huaisher raised his hand in despair and covered his mask. "Welcome social death. I have something to do. I'll leave first." Under the dumbfounded gazes of the officers, he slowly got up and carefully took 2 steps back. Then, he turned around and ran out of the lounge. The moment he ran out of the door, he heard an angry roar behind him. "Don't run, you bastard! You want to leave after offending the Astronomy Association? The one wearing the helmet is Huaisher. Kill him!" Huaisher took a deep breath and ran as fast as he could. Therefore, since the history of the Jinling branch of the Astronomical Society, this was the largest, worst, and most destructive fight between members of the Jinling branch of the Astronomical Society. On the 17th floor, in the Internal Affairs Office. Prison break. Ai Qing frowned. "Yes." The fat woman across the table got up and walked to the door. After taking a look, she turned around and closed the door. "The higher-ups have set confidentiality rules. At least pretend." "Oh, I understand." Ai Qing nodded and said, "But this is the first time I've seen someone eat so much at work. Don't you feel guilty at all when you're a salary thief?" While Ai Qing was speaking, the owner of the office had already taken out a bucket of fresh and spicy fried chicken and various condiments from the drawers and cabinets and placed them on the table. Chai Fei calmly put on a napkin and disposable glove. She picked up the fried chicken bucket and looked up at Ai Qing. "Next time, can you turn off the recording pen before you insult me?" "Tisk." Ai Qing shook her head unhappily. She took out a recording pen from her pocket and threw it on the table. "Turn off the other one too." Chai Fei still did not let down her guard. "No." Ai Qing sighed and said, "I left in a hurry and didn't have time to turn it off." "Wow, you're such a bad woman." Chai Fei stared at her and said, "I'm kind enough to tell you the truth, but you want to blackmail me." "Oh, a woman who uses my photos to trick people into buying money for her online games is not qualified to talk about me." Ai Qing looked back coldly. The two stared at each other and then slowly looked away. Ai Qing and Chai Fei, as advanced students at the headquarters in the same year, could be said to be the famous weirdos in the whole batch. One of them was very careful and wanted to seize all the authority in her hands, while the other slacked off and wanted to push all the work to others. 2 weirdos. The strange thing was that these 2 fellows always had something in common in some strange places. After a few more contacts, the 2 of them formed a tacit alliance that didn't need any words. As the 2 people with the highest scores in the final evaluation, they both rejected the invitation to stay at the headquarters. Ai Qing wanted to get more power from the local government, while this woman wanted to find a leisurely job with a salary of 13 yuan a year so that she could slack off. It could only be said that to a certain extent, both of them achieved their goals. This time, Ai Qing came back early because she wanted to get some information from her. The long-awaited confrontation came to an end with Chai Fei's concession. She shook her head and sighed, "Okay, I can't beat you." "Where were we?" "Prison break." "Yes, the trench prison. Someone escaped." Chai Fei swallowed a piece of boneless chicken, licked the sauce on her gloves, and said vaguely, "After the investigation, the higher-ups found that the guy escaped from the entrance of Jinling." "Which entrance?" "The one in this building, the fictitious floor P2. While speaking, Chai Fei raised her eyes and looked at the top of her head, as if she was trying to see the hidden area that didn't exist in the normal physical structure. In the void invisible to the naked eye, there were countless layers of tight security. From the inside to the outside. "There's a mole?" Ai Qing frowned. "Definitely, everyone is investigating who it is." Chai Fei nodded and said, "It's hard to trust the members of the headquarters, so they urgently recruited members from other places." "Where is he? Did they catch him?" "Who knows, there are no secrets in the astronomy club, it's just that each department has a little privacy. Who knows whose privacy he's hiding in?" Chai Fei shrugged and said, "Right now, the entire Jinling is like a university. It's loose on the outside but tight on the inside. All ascenders are allowed to enter but not leave. But everyone knows that this situation won't last long. Especially at this time, the Asian rookie competition is about to start. What if that guy sneaks into the competition and causes trouble? So we have to step up the investigation and search, and then the problem comes. It's a sovereignty issue, right?" Ai Qing couldn't help but sneer. "The Social Security Bureau must be unwilling now, right? It's not easy to be a world police officer." Chai Fei sighed vaguely and sipped her cola. She said, "On this matter, the Sovereignty Party and the Border Party are already in a deadlock. The Social Security Bureau is unwilling to let us take action, but the Astronomy Club can't do nothing. In short, the real search force should be the dark elites mobilized by the headquarters. Calling you guys here is just a formality. If necessary, there will be a force to fill in the gap." Just as Ai Qing had expected, it was this kind of **T again. "Don't be so unhappy, just treat it as a public holiday. Have you been to the Confucius Temple? I'll treat you to a food stall." Chai Fei comforted her. "The men are decorations and the women are vases. After the show, you can get the medal and go home." "What about the Social Security Bureau?" "The Social Security Bureau won't give up this opportunity to show their ability, right?" Chai Fei looked up at her and sighed helplessly. "Long Bo Wei." In the silence, neither of them spoke. "Okay, now that the gods are fighting, let's all enjoy the shade." When the ice cubes in the cup of cola in front of Ai Qing melted, she had already digested the undercurrent that had been surging in Jinling these days. Without needing Chai Fei to serve her tea, she was ready to leave. Before leaving, she asked one last time, "Who broke out of prison?" "I don't know." Chai Fei shook her head and threw the empty chicken box into the trash can. She wiped her mouth, sprayed some air freshener, and said casually, "My authority is only to see the number B in the notice." Sometimes, being a secretary of a key department was the advantage of being able to see some details. For Ai Qing, this was no different from saying it out loud. In the trench prison, the prisoners classified as B were almost all members of Green Day. And those who could escape through the obstacles were all characters of the 10 disasters level. Currently, there were only 2 people imprisoned by the Astronomy Club in the Mariana prison, the Blood Flood and the Locust Plague. One was half dead, and the other was already dead. Neither one was easy to deal with. Ai Qing nodded and turned to leave. However, she heard Chai Fei's voice behind her. "Oh," she suddenly said, "you have to be careful." She emphasized the word you. "The Yin family." Ai Qing couldn't help but roll her eyes. "Those guys are really haunting me. I'm afraid they'll pressure me from the inside." This news was too important for her, and it almost confirmed the source of the uneasy premonition. She couldn't help but sigh. "It's hard for you to be so well informed." Chai Fei shrugged calmly and said, "You know, as long as you're fat, you'll suddenly have a lot of girlfriends." "Thank you." Ai Qing thanked her solemnly. "You're welcome." Chai Fei said, I have so many girlfriends, but aren't you the only one who really treats me as a friend? After a long silence, Ai Ching sighed dejectedly. She took out a recording pen from her pocket and threw it on the table. If you were thinner and smarter, I might not be able to treat you as a friend. She turned her wheelchair and left. The door closed again. This woman, Chai Fei, lowered her head and looked at the second recording pen on the table. She raised her eyebrows, and immediately, a smug smile appeared on her originally sincere face. Humph, you're indeed lying to me. She picked up the recording pen and smiled happily. Unfortunately, my skills are better this time. However, when she held the recording pen in her hand, she felt that it was light as a feather, like an empty shell. When Chai Fei turned the recording pen and looked at the back, she saw a scribble that looked like a raised middle finger. Chai Fei was stunned for a long time. She couldn't help but laugh out loud and threw the 2 recording pens into the trash. Compared to those girlfriends who had their brains filled with water, she liked Ai Ching so much. Whether she won or lost, she felt happy. Chapter 179. Name: Huaisher. Gender: Ahem, male. On the chair in the office, Huaisher twisted a little uneasily, raised his hand and asked, "Wait a minute, did we open a new volume?" The registrar behind the desk looked up in confusion, not understanding what he was talking about. "No, nothing." After inspecting the Book of Destiny and discovering that it hadn't suddenly split apart, Huaisher let out a sigh of relief. It was good that she hadn't opened a single volume. The plot was still under her control. He had had enough of the sudden development of the super dimension. Behind the desk, the young man with glasses looked at him in confusion. After a moment of silence, he pointed at Huaisher's helmet and said, "I think it's better if you take that off." Forget it. Huaisher didn't know how to explain. After a long time, he said, "I'm afraid of strangers." The registrar's face twitched. "Okay. By the way, where's the lady just now?" Huaisher asked curiously. "I don't know. She came back crying and ran away." "Did something happen?" The young man scratched his head. "I'm also here to take over the shift. Please forgive me if I made any mistakes." It's okay. It's everyone's first time." Huaisher waved his hand and laid on the chair. Hearing the noise outside, he was relieved. Fortunately, he ran fast. No one knew where he was. "What's going on outside?" The young man frowned and asked. "I don't know. Maybe there's a fight?" Huaisher whistled innocently. Anyway, no one could see his guilty look through the mask. "The Jinling branch is really messy." "Yeah." The registrar sighed. "Where were we?" "Take off the helmet." "No, it's further ahead." "Gender." Oh, yes, gender, male." The registrar hurriedly lowered his head and recorded. Then he looked up and asked, "In order to facilitate the unified management and all considerations when assigning tasks, can you show your soul ability and rank?" As if he could sense Huaisher's hesitation, he hurriedly said, "Don't worry, these will be recorded in a confidential file. It will be absolutely confidential. Secret my ass." Old Lou's example was right in front of him. His tear-stained reminder was still ringing in his ears. If you don't want to be transferred to some secret department to work overtime until you die, you must not show off how useful and unique your ability is. Therefore, Huaisher raised his head and said sincerely, "Rank 2 gold, rank ascendant. The stigmata is a small lineage called Mountain Ghost. The ability is to grow grass. As for the soul, it is to transform into a blade." With that, Huaisher stretched out his hand, and a sacrificial knife appeared in his hand. He stabbed it into the potted plant on the table, and a cactus immediately grew out. Okay. The scribe's pen flew as he quickly finished recording. He looked up and saw that Huaisher was still poking her potted plant. She kept on poking the cactus as if she was afraid that he would not believe her. The corner of his eyes twitched. "That's enough, please stop poking." "Oh, okay." Huaisher withdrew his hand. The phone suddenly rang. "Excuse me, I have to take a call." The registrar smiled awkwardly. Just as he hung up the phone, Huaisher looked around the exquisite office. Although it was small, it was exquisitely decorated. Many places had been put in a lot of effort, just like a girl. There was even a potted plant on the table. Life was interesting. "Okay, I've arranged everything here. The work will be done soon." The registrar looked at the time again. "How about this, when I'm free, let's do it at 8:10. The call was hung up. "By the way, how should I address you?" Huaisher asked. "Wind Review." The young registrar smiled and pushed up his glasses. "Wind as in wind, review as in. No need to introduce yourself. I already know that you're Huaisher. Okay, I've officially entered your information into the backend." He got up and extended his hand to Huaisher. "You can check your records on your phone later. Soon, the confidentiality department will activate your authority and the account on the Metatron Cube, as well as internal merit points. I wish you all the best in your future operations." "Thank you." Huaisher shook his hand politely. The registration was over. A huge stone was lifted from his heart. By the time Ai Qing found Huaisher, it was already 2 hours after the meeting ended. At 8 o'clock in the evening, as if lost, Huaisher had already wandered blindly into the kitchen. "Where the hell did you go?" Ai Qing frowned and asked. "Didn't I say I'd wait in the lounge?" The masked man's tone became strange. "It's a long story." "Forget it, it's good that you're not in the lounge." Ai Qing shook her head unhappily. "The quality of these surrounding officers is too low. They actually fought in the branch and hung on the wall one by one. Do you know what's going on?" The masked man was silent. Ai Qing frowned as if she felt that something was wrong. But then she heard the sound of the phone vibrating violently. "Emergency mobilization order. Everyone assemble and set off to set up the perimeter defense. The traces of Green Sun have been found." The location was in a huge hotel next to Xuanwu Lake. 10 minutes ago, the traces of Green Sun members were confirmed. Then 10 minutes later, the operation was ready and everyone was in position. Under the shroud of the shadows, the Special Operations Team from the Trench Prison, the Ascendant troops named Primordial Darkness, had already walked into the hotel with a huge luggage bag in hand, leaving only a dim shadow on the floor that slithered past. 1 in position. Whiteboard in position. What kind of stupid code name is that? 2 in position. Sparrow said that this is called, "When in Rome do as the Romans do." Dongxia folk customs are so profound. 4 in position. By the way, why am I called 4 in position? All in position. The surveillance has been shared. I want to eat soup dumplings. We'll eat later. Don't talk about food when you're working, okay? A helpless voice sounded in the channel. Sparrow in position. Everyone is here. Where are the targets? A total of 7, all in the suites on the 9th floor. The structure is as shown in the picture. There are alarm systems in the corridor, but there are no traces of escapees. Also, they seem to be packing up and preparing to leave. There's no time to lose. Let's move quickly. 1 and Whiteboard are in charge of firepower support. 4 in position and Qing Isa are in charge of blocking the border. As for the others can do whatever they want. Sparrow threw down the bulging luggage bag in her hand and took out a variety of guns and threw them to her companions. 9 Treasures Lotus Lamp and I will be in charge of breaking in. Did they say to capture them alive or kill them all? They didn't say. Since they didn't say, half of them will kill, and the other half will depend on luck. Sparrow put on her bulletproof vest and pulled the bolt of the pump-action shotgun in her hand. It's not easy to be a social animal. You're taking a break, lip-syncing, and eating cheese hot pot. You come to work when you're told to, not giving any buffer time. Hey, do you usually take a break? We often work overtime. What's a break? What's a cheese hot pot? No, what's a break? Sparrow's expression under her mask became more and more helpless. Forget it, pretend I didn't ask. We're all social animals of the astronomy club when we're alive, and we're still the ghost animals of the astronomy club when we're dead. It's really not easy to give up our youth and grandchildren. Signal cut off, get ready. Countdown, 5, 4. Sparrow stood still in the room, took a deep breath, and looked at the 9 Treasures lotus lamp beside her. The 9 Treasures lotus lamp, who was as tall and sturdy as a giant, put on his helmet, lifted the large shield that was covered with armor plates, and the heavy high-frequency axe that was charging forward, and cracked his neck. A cracking sound rang out. The lights in the empty room flickered. They flickered in the countdown. After illuminating the hole in the mask, Sparrow's eyes gradually turned cold. 3, 2, 1. In an instant, silence fell. Everyone suddenly heard a sharp sound that seemed to pierce their eardrums. Amidst the roar, the entire building shook, and the huge 9th floor was instantly covered by shadows. The depth index rose rapidly. Under the manipulation of the outside world, a crack was carefully opened in the great mystic Zarathustra. In an instant, the laws of physics here were shrouded in darkness under the rapid rise of the depth index. At the last moment, Sparrow let out a hoarse laugh in the darkness. Let us Patty! Boom! Under their feet, the solid floor fell apart in an instant. Countless broken bricks and concrete structures quickly split apart and turned into thick dust. Like a rainstorm, the dust fell down with the 2 figures. Amidst the dancing dust, the Sparrow caught a glimpse of astonished faces. Then, the roar of gunfire rang out. The alchemy gunpowder burst out with blazing poisonous fire, propelling countless tiny iron balls to fly out, drawing a radiating silver light in the darkness. Before the dense silver light, like a rainstorm, all flesh and blood were torn apart and penetrated, smashed like rotten tomatoes in a blender, and blood splattered everywhere. Sparrow had already landed, smiling at the shocked emptiness through the mask. She raised the barrel in her hand and pulled the trigger again. An even deeper darkness descended upon them. From the hoarse screams and roars, there were dull loud noises and the roar of gunfire. There was the terrifying sound of knives and axes cutting flesh and blood, and the silver light bursting out of scattershot. But soon, the gunshots and loud noises had all dissipated. In less than 5 seconds, the darkness gradually thinned. What replaced it was a ghastly scarlet. Countless broken limbs and bones turned the messy room into a nightmarish hell. Sparrow stood in hell, stepping on a pool of blood, and the scorching barrel was pressed against the forehead of the last survivor. There was a sizzling sound. Don't cause any trouble, and don't run around blindly. You save yourself the trouble, and I save myself the trouble, understand? Sparrow squatted down and looked at his face, as if to say something about surrendering and sparing his life, but soon sighed helplessly. Forget it, look at my eyes, and so it was done. With the crisp sound of a lighter, Sparrow lifted the mask, and the cigarette in her mouth was lit. The flickering flame illuminated the disgustingly handsome face and the deep sadness that could not be seen through. According to the original vacation plan, I should be in Rome for hair growth treatment, but I have to come back to clean up the trash. Thinking of this, Yu Dongri was so angry that his eyes turned red. Look at what you have done! Chapter 180. The process was very simple. After the operation, the Dark One team disguised themselves and retreated. The captives were handed over to the Astronomy Society. The surrounding officers quickly entered the scene to clean up. Then, they prepared to apologize before the Social Security Bureau came over to flip the table and scold them. Then, the person in charge put on a smile to appease the anger of the big brothers. I'm sorry for neglecting your feelings, Shi-chan, but there is a bond between us. Can you understand my impatience, and so on. But this had nothing to do with the people working at the bottom. Unlike the other members of the Dark One who secretly retreated, Yu Dongri thought that since no one knew him, he might as well change his clothes and smoke. He casually came down from the luxurious lounge of the hotel with 2 bottles of good wine in his hand. He was thinking about which scenic spot to go fishing during his break. Then, he saw Ai Qing sitting at the entrance of the hotel with a gloomy face maintaining order. She looked at Yu Dongri with cold and angry eyes. Then, her slender eyebrows slowly raised. Yu Dongri was so scared that his face instinctively paled. He couldn't help but want to retreat. F***ck, why do I bump into you everywhere? Same to you. Ai Qing shook her head and asked directly, did the operation go smoothly? We caught one alive, but most likely they don't know much. It's probably a wasted trip. Yu Dongri shook his head. One of them didn't take the confidentiality agreement seriously, and the other didn't even remember that there was a confidentiality agreement. After casually exchanging the situation, he looked around curiously. Where's Huaishur? Not with you? Ai Qing didn't say anything. She looked at him in confusion and soon frowned. Didn't he go to clean up the scene? You didn't see him? No. Yu Dongri shook his head blankly. I heard that he's dressed up like a ghost recently. If I see him, I'll definitely catch his friends. He paused for a long time, as if he thought of something. Suddenly, his face turned pale. You know what? He looked down at Ai Qing. I suddenly have a very bad guess. What a coincidence. Ai Qing's face was livid. Me too. 3 minutes later, a message came from the command center at the rear. Agent Huaishur has not responded to our inquiries. His whereabouts are unknown. In other words, he was missing, together with 7 other officers from all over Jinling. 5 minutes later, under Ai Qing's urgent request, the Jinling branch was sealed off from the inside and outside, and they began the 3rd investigation. Then, they found the body of the clerk in the personnel registration office. Her pretty face still showed the horror and despair of her death. Traces of a struggle were found in the office. Finally, a note was found on the table. On the note, the matchstick man with a smiling face waved goodbye. Goodbye. 10 minutes later, in a secluded sewer in Jinling, a heavy figure wearing a helmet quietly crawled out. Dirty water dripped down from his body. He reached out as if he was taking something off his wrist. Thus, the helmet and protective suit that were identical to Huaishur's disappeared silently, revealing a genial face with glasses. When he turned his head and stared at the faintly visible Astronomical Society building in the distance, the corners of his mouth curled up into a happy smile. 3 hours ago, the registration ended. Feng Jian stood up and warmly shook his hand to congratulate him. Welcome to the Astronomical Society. Ah, thank you. Huaishur nodded and pointed at the table with some curiosity. That's right, there seems to be a bug in your potted plant. Feng Jian looked at the table. A locust jumped out of the soil in the potted plant. He raised his eyebrows. In the soil, he could faintly see a few strands of withered hair and a scalp hidden under the soil. Huaishur froze for a moment and looked at Feng Jian in astonishment. Feng Jian helplessly shrugged and sighed. I was going to let you go, a premonition of death. Huaishur reflexively pulled out her axe and swung it down at his head. Suddenly, she felt a frightening surge of origin substance emanate from the hand that he was grabbing. His vision went black. In his daze, he heard Feng Jian's astonished voice. He didn't die? Forget about it. He's still a hostage. As Feng Jian waved his hand, a crack appeared in the air, and an ice-cold corpse fell out. Feng Jian casually stuffed it into the cabinet. Then, he picked up Huaishur, folded him up, and stuffed him into the narrow space within the crack. Soul ability, Bubbles, creates a small fragment of the border that doesn't exist for very long. Even though the shelf life is both long and short, it's as convenient as a storage ring. He placed the potted plant into a plastic bag and stuffed it inside as well. Feng Jian calmly pushed open the door and left. He locked the door behind him and turned around to head upstairs. 10 minutes after the news of Huai Shi and the others disappearing was placed in front of the Jinling branch manager, he woke up from his daze. He could feel that his origin substance was about to collapse. It had been destroyed by that frightening attack. His head felt like it was about to split open. Thankfully, the Book of Destiny had pulled him back at the last moment, preventing him from becoming a drooling retard. However, his entire body was still weak. He could barely move. In addition, no one would be able to move after being nailed to the wall. He could feel waves of intense pain coming from his hand. Through the mask, he could see the nails that had pierced through his hands and were now deeply embedded in the wall. There were also shackles on his neck and legs. He had been locked up. In the silence, only the sound of water dripping could be heard. Huai Shi closed his eyes and tried to struggle, but he suddenly began to twitch. He didn't know what kind of damned law had been applied to the nails that pierced through his hands, but they didn't cause him any harm. However, whenever he tried to struggle or use his origin substance, he would feel an intense pain that would make him faint. His soul ability and sacred insignia had both been restricted. In other words, he was now a prisoner through and through. But the problem was, who was it that was so bored as to kidnap a salted fish like him? Relying on his KP's enhanced perception, Huai Shi could faintly hear the indistinct voice behind the metal door. He immediately recalled Feng Jian's face. "That bastard," an old voice asked in a low voice. "Where's the item? Did you get it?" "There's a change in the plan." Feng Jian sighed. "We were about to succeed, but we didn't expect that group of members would suddenly start a group fight." "What the hell? When did the quality of the members of the Astronomy Association become so low?" "As soon as I went upstairs, I saw a yellow alert inside. There was no way for me to get close to the P1 floor, so I didn't have a chance to make a move. I only had time to blend in with the operation team and bring out the locust plague." Outside Huai Shi's cage, under the dim yellow light, there were already many people sitting around the table. After the old man with the monocle heard Feng Jian's words, he didn't get angry because the plan that he had been preparing for so long had gone wrong. He only nodded. At least the rescue operation was successful. He paused for a moment and suddenly asked, "Over at the Black Tortoise Lake Hotel, Shao Qi and the other 6 people should have been sacrificed, right? He's a man of 2 minds. It's not a pity that he ran out and became a pawn." "Uncle Bien, you don't need to feel pity." Feng Jian shook his head indifferently. "If we were really in a desperate situation, he would be the first to betray us. We should have given him a chance." Uncle Bien sighed and didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and had the people around him bring out the food and place it on the table. Feng Jian didn't stand on ceremony. He wolfed down the food and wiped his mouth, waiting for Uncle Bien to speak. "Leave the hostages with me." "You can leave with the locust plague," Uncle Bien said directly. "My place is not considered a secret place. It's only a matter of time before the Astronomy Society finds it. Since the leader has entrusted this important task to you, don't hesitate or feel pity." Feng Jian opened his mouth to speak. "I know you want to persuade me, but there's no need for that." Uncle Bien shook his head. "An old man like me can't walk freely. I'll be a burden to you. Why don't I stay and warm up the team? If there's anything else I can help you with, just tell me." "Do you have a gun?" Feng Jian asked curiously. Uncle Bien turned back to look, and the large man in the corner walked over. He pulled out a gun from his waist and placed it on the table with 2 clips. Feng Jian took it and started to fiddle with it excitedly. Do people in the present world use this kind of firearm? It's rare to see them at the border. It can only be used in the present world. Uncle Bien asked, "You prepared so many hostages. How did you arrange them?" "Tell the Astronomy Society to open the blockade and let us leave freely. Otherwise, we'll kill one of their members on the dark web every hour." "And then?" "Yes, and then?" Feng Jian smiled mysteriously. He put the gun in his pocket and picked up the flower pot on the table. He held it on his fingertips and twirled it in a circle. "We'll talk about the rest later." Uncle Bien nodded and didn't say anything else. He watched as Feng Jian turned and left. In the silence, Uncle Bien took a sip of tea and ordered, "Rod, go check. Don't let anything go wrong." A hunchbacked middle-aged man stood up and nodded. He took a gun from the cabinet, pushed open the door, and walked into the basement. While the metal door was open, Huaishir listened carefully to the breathing sounds outside the door. 1, 2, 3. There were 7 people in total. One of them was an old man, but he didn't know how many of them were ascendants. The hunchbacked man walked in, as if he was worried about something. He first picked up a stick from the corner of the room and carefully poked Huaishir twice. Only then did he lower his guard a bit. He walked over to Huaishir and kicked him twice. After confirming that Huaishir couldn't do anything, he put away his gun and reached out to pull off Huaishir's helmet. However, he didn't know how to do it. After tugging for a while, he finally found the button at the back. When he pulled off the helmet with all his might, Huaishir's long hair flowed out like water and fell to the ground, contrasting with his pale face. Even though the tip of his nose was still bleeding from the impact of the origin substance, it was hard to hide his beauty. Rod stared at him in astonishment. His eyes lit up as he revealed a vulgar smile. He reached out and pinched Feng Jian's chin. "Aya, it's actually a little girl? WDNMD, who are you talking about?" Huaishir looked over. The hoarse male voice caused the hunchbacked man to freeze in place. A guy? It seemed like he couldn't accept this cruel reality. He was dazed for a long time before he squeezed out a smile on his pale face. "It's fine. A guy is fine too." As he spoke, he roughly grabbed Huaishir's hair and lifted him up. He lowered his voice and whispered into Huaishir's ear, "When Uncle Bien goes to bed tonight, I'll keep you company." In the shadows, Huaishir gently moved his fingers, feeling the iron wedged into his palms. When he breathed, it was as if he could see the countless viruses spilling out from his protective suit. "Tonight." Huaishir lowered his head and sneered silently. "If you let a human-shaped infectious agent like me into your nest and you can still live until nighttime, I'll write the word scholar backwards." Chapter 181. Open up the authority and let them leave freely? In the lounge, Ai Qing heard what Chai Fei said and couldn't help but sneer. What kind of dream is he having? Besides, even if we agree, will the Social Security Bureau obediently give way? They're just trying to stall for time. But the higher-ups want to talk, and they also want to stall for time. Chai Fei shrugged helplessly. Ai Qing had expected this and just nodded, and then, 45 minutes ago, a member of the Astronomy Association of the Dark Net live broadcast had his head blown up. With a bang, his brain juices came out. Chai Fei took a big gulp of her cola to calm herself down, as if she still had lingering fears. "And then?" Ai Qing asked again. Chai Fei pondered for a moment and lowered her voice. "I think there are a few people who have the same idea. This is the fault of the trench prison, and we can't bear it. But the problem is that we can't be too cowardly and back down just because we're scared. We have to show our stance. But we can't give up on those who were kidnapped to maintain the balance of the current situation. Otherwise, our reputation will be ruined. They want to be prostitutes, but they also want to be chaste. This is the style of the higher-ups of the branch." Ai Qing sneered and immediately understood the thoughts of the higher-ups. She asked directly, "Social Security Bureau?" Chai Fei held the straw and lowered her head to stir the ice in the cup. She was focused and serious as if she didn't hear anything. Even if she didn't say anything, her meaning was already obvious. Now it seemed that the Jinling branch seemed to be working hard on the surface, but secretly chose to give up the initiative and leaked the news to the Social Security Bureau. "Don't you have the ability? Go ahead." At this time, they started to sing the tune of Astronomy and Social Security. Although it was a bit embarrassing, There was no other way. The border party officially compromised with the sovereignty party. But the consequences were not so simple. After this incident, the higher-ups of the Jinling branch would definitely come out to take the blame. But it was not over yet, right? Everyone had to seize the time and put the blame on others. Even if all the crows in the world were black, there would always be one crow darker than the other crows. If it was in the past, Ai Qing might have sneered and said something sarcastic. But now she actually felt that this was not bad. At least that unlucky bastard still had a chance to be rescued. "You've changed a lot," Chai Fei suddenly said. She seemed to have discovered something and raised her eyebrows happily. "Are you in love?" Ai Qing frowned and looked at her in confusion, as if she was looking at an idiot. "Aren't you secreting too much oxytocin?" "Wow, how can you speak so mercilessly?" Chai Fei shrugged helplessly. All right, I understand that you're not that kind of person, but are you really not going to consider it? Ai Qing was cold. "Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Chai Fei picked up her empty Coke cup and sucked on the straw. "To think that I even took a peek at your agent's file. I have to say, he's a good man. When I think about how such a good-looking young man with a smile is being done to him by bad people in this way and that way, my heart itches. Cough, cough, my heart aches." A stream of blood silently flowed down from the smirking face. Ai Qing closed her eyes. She didn't want to see her retarded appearance anymore. According to Chai Fei's imagination, at this very moment, that skinny youth should be hung up weakly, and then there would be an ugly man with a strange smile waving a leather whip, leaving lines of painful bloodstains on his fair skin. In more and more mosaics, the young man screamed helplessly with a miserable expression. Even the background was full of white roses. In fact, there were no roses, no mosaics, and no screams and misery. Although Huai Shi was indeed being whipped. "Speak." The burly man waving the whip coldly said, "Are you mute?" In the whistling sound, the whip mixed with steel wire came down, tearing the clothes and flesh. Huai Shi convulsed in severe pain. Finally, he raised his head and grinned at him, revealing a mocking smile. "Can you use more strength?" He finally made a sound. "Or, Green Day can't even bear to give you food?" The burly man's expression suddenly changed. Immediately, he grinned. "Well, boy, you forced me to do this. It's a pity for your face." His muscles bulged once more as he raised his whip and lashed it down, leaving a deep gash on Huai Shi's chest that was so deep that her bones could be seen. Huai Shi whistled but didn't speak. He just quietly stared at the blood flying up. The blood fell to the ground and sputtered silently. A layer of fine hair that was difficult to see with the naked eye silently sprouted. Just like dandelions, countless strains of bacteria flew in the air, riding the gentle wind like the tide, spreading in all directions. The whip continued, until the old man sitting in the chair in the corner of the basement made a sound. "Keep it down." Uncle Bien held a teacup and looked at the display screen hanging on the wall. "The executions in other places are about to begin." On the flickering screen, a dim image suddenly lit up. Countless bullet screens floated across it. "Really? Astronomy Association member? So miserable. I'll give you a rocket, brother. Go and turn on the lights. You can't even see your face. What's the point of live streaming?" On the dark web, countless viewers gathered in front of their screens, gloating over the tragedy that was about to happen. They slanted their merciless viciousness in the bullet screens. Among the countless cruel live broadcasts, a considerable number of viewers were attracted here. More and more accounts even logged in and went straight here. Roars could be vaguely heard outside the screen, as if there was a fierce battle. In the middle of the screen, a Tide member was kneeling on the ground. He had been tortured until he was unrecognizable. But then, someone violently grabbed his hair and forced him to face the screen. At the last moment, his lips opened and closed as if he wanted to say something. "This is the second one." A cold voice sounded from the side. Then, a gun was pressed against his head. Bang! His brain splattered. Rescue was clearly close at hand, but it was still a step too late. Green Sun used the most violent method to counterattack the Astronomy Association's silence. So disgusting. In the Operation Command Center of the Jinling Social Security Bureau, Yao Keir moved back a little in disgust and turned off the live broadcast. She turned back and shouted to the young man in charge of commanding, "Big cousin, we were a step too late. One is dead. Then don't leave him alive." The man called Big Cousin picked up the walkie-talkie and said something, ending the stalemate there. Then, he ordered, "Brothers of the Long Bow Guards, speed up the search. It's rare for the Astronomy Association to give in. Let's work hard and do a good job." On the screen, the giants who were running through the border layer in the city responded. Then, a slightly immature young man's face squeezed out on the screen, as if he was running through the city with a long gun. He asked curiously at the phone screen, "Big Cousin, are we really going to save the guy who confessed to Cousin?" Big Cousin sighed helplessly. "He already said it was a misunderstanding. Can you not always take it to heart? As an older brother, I haven't said anything yet. But I don't feel good looking at him." The young man widened his eyes and looked unhappy. "He's so weak. How can he have the face to confess to Cousin? Yuan Zhao, even if he confessed to Little White, it has nothing to do with our mission." Big Cousin's expression became serious. "Letting you participate in the operation is already an exception. Listen to the captain's arrangements for all operations, understand? Don't act on your own." "Understood." Yuan Zhao responded weakly. After hanging up the call, he curled his lips and looked at the leader in front. The leader shrugged helplessly at him. After a moment of silence, Yuan Zhao's eyes lit up. He leaned forward as if he was about to say something, but he was sternly interrupted by the mature woman in the leader. "Remember, don't act recklessly, understand?" "Okay." Yuan Zhao lowered his head weakly, but his eyes were moving nimbly. A wonderful idea appeared in his mind. "I have an idea." In the basement, Uncle Bien looked at the bloody Huai Shi and suggested, "In fact, you don't have to suffer, and I don't have to go through so much trouble. Green Sun is also a human. Although we are all a border race that you look down on, we are also made of flesh. We were born with the same moral values as you. If there is a choice, no one wants to do such a cruel thing. So, do me a favor and answer my question. I promise to send you away safely. How about it?" The burly man took a step back, panting, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Huai Shi, who was nailed to the wall, hung his head weakly and was dripping with blood. He didn't say a word. No matter how he looked at it, he looked like a prisoner waiting to be slaughtered. But for some reason, the uneasiness in Elder Bien's heart grew stronger. This was an inexplicable intuition, an instinctive vigilance against danger. Since this person came to their hiding place, the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. It made him more and more afraid. Even though he had lived for so long, he also knew that there was a possibility of death this time, but he didn't know where this strange feeling came from. This young brat? This weak gigolo who would only be laughed at the border? Why did he feel more and more uneasy? Although as an architectural scholar who was proficient in construction, he didn't agree with the rationality of this kind of impulse, but at this moment, he found that, if there was an elephant in the room, he couldn't turn a blind eye to it. But why did this young man give him a stronger and stronger sense of threat? No matter how he whipped and tortured, this sense of threat couldn't be weakened, and even became stronger and stronger. Did I ignore something? Uncle Bien slowly got up and walked to Huai Shi. He lowered his head and looked at him. "Tell me, what did I forget?" "Well, let me think." Huai Shi thought for a long time, then raised his head and suggested, "Do you think it's your conscience?" Slap. Chapter 182. Pa. Uncle Bien expressionlessly poked a stun baton on Huai Shi's face. The electric light crackled, and Huai Shi twitched violently and screamed. The stun baton was withdrawn. Huai Shi panted heavily and spat out large mouthfuls of blood and saliva. Perhaps it was too stuffy in the basement. The anxious Uncle Bien suppressed his urge to cough, bent down, and pulled Huai Shi's hair. His old face was ferocious. "Speak. Young man, tell me, what conspiracy are you brewing? What other secrets are you hiding?" "Secrets? It's good." Huai Shi coughed violently and asked curiously, "Uncle, you're already so old. Why are you still reading novels?" Electric light burst forth. Uncle Bien took a step back and slowly sat on the chair. He stared indifferently at Huai Shi's embarrassing appearance with his saliva and snot flowing out of his nose. The light illuminated his beast-like vertical pupils, which were gloomy with indifference and ferociousness. "Nice contact lenses." Huai Shi spat out the saliva in his mouth and asked curiously, "Where did you buy them?" "Really? Thank you." Uncle Bien touched the corner of his eyes and said calmly, "After so many years, this is the first time I've heard someone praise my eyes. You don't need to be envious. As long as you were born at the border, all of this is free." Huai Shi raised his eyebrows and didn't speak. "Listen, child, maybe you think your righteous and green son is evil. In fact, to some extent this is also true." Uncle Bien sneered softly. "You see, many people in the present world will like Western movies. Free chivalrous men with their own guns and white horses, fighting against gangs and injustice. It's romantic and hot-blooded. In reality, the border is a place like the West. Not everyone can be born a chivalrous man, and not everyone is qualified to be romantic and hot-blooded. Most of the time, we can only play the role of the background wall saved by the heroes. The poor people with no sense of existence are just tools used to arouse the hero's indignation. Most of the time, everyone seems to have a lot of choices, but in reality, we don't have a choice." He stared at the disheveled Huai Shi, his face expressionless. "Just like me, just like you. We are enemies, young man. We should fight to the death. Who told me to be born at the border? According to the rules, I deserve to die there. It sounds very reasonable." Huai Shi sighed from the bottom of his heart. "I feel that you are all a group of unfortunate people, just like me. Since we are all fellow sufferers, why do you make things difficult for me? Why don't you let me go so that we can be good friends?" Lightning flashed. The electric baton left a charred black mark on Huai Shi's chest. "Listen, young man. I have said so much, but I just want to tell you that Green Sun is not a group of lunatics. Even if we are seen as thugs, bandits, and terrorists, we will abide by the rules more often. We even keep our promises more than your astronomy club." Uncle Bien stepped forward, coughed softly, and looked at Huai Shi's face. "I can guarantee that you can have a good rest and go back safely, but you have to be honest." He stared coldly into Huai Shi's eyes and asked word by word, "What are you hiding? What else can I hide? We are almost going to be honest with each other, right?" Huai Shi was amused by him. He showed his naked upper body and asked, "Didn't that guy, Feng Jian, tell you? My name is Huai Shi, male, 17 years old. I'm a student, a part-time member of the Astronomical Society, as well as a confidential secretary. Sublimator, level 2. I'm just a mountain ghost who only knows how to grow grass." He also stared at Uncle Bien's face and asked seriously, "You have already nailed me here. What else do I have to be afraid of?" "Yes, what is there to be afraid of?" Uncle Bien stared at his face in a daze. After a long time, he slowly got up, couldn't help but cough and cover his mouth. The others wanted to come over, but he waved them away. After a long time, he finally calmed down and lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry, young man. Maybe I am wrong?" he said softly, "but I am afraid of you." He didn't hide the weakness in his heart. When he stared at that pair of familiar eyes, he finally understood where his uneasiness came from. Once upon a time, didn't he see such eyes with his own eyes? so calm and so indifferent, as if ignoring the weight of death, cruelly overlooking everything, without cruelty, but also without gentleness. Get ready for the live broadcast. He suddenly ordered, Rod, pack up. Kill him and we will leave. Rod froze for a moment and looked up at Uncle Bien in astonishment. After seeing that pair of indifferent eyes, he couldn't help but shiver. Without saying anything, he turned around and obediently packed up his things. You want to kill me? Huaisher laughed in between coughs. Aren't we friends? Uncle Bien lowered his eyes in pity and stared at him. Even if we are friends, we will have to say goodbye one day, right? Death was approaching, but the torture finally came to an abrupt end. With the setting of the spotlight, the cold atmosphere disappeared without a trace. Except for Huaisher's breathing, everything seemed to have become gentle. In this rare silence, the young man seemed to have been freed from the pain. He lowered his head and imagined that there were invisible strings pulsating. He couldn't help but hoarsely hum the tune of a nursery rhyme. It was peaceful and warm, as if he was saying goodbye to a dear friend. Ah, never change, let us be friends forever. Today, let us say goodbye to each other, until the day we meet again. What is he singing? The man holding the whip frowned. I told him to shut up. Don't worry about him. Let him be. Uncle Bien stood coldly before Huaisher and stared quietly at Huaisher until the song finally came to an end. As the spotlight lit up, the young man with lowered eyes appeared on the screen. The live broadcast began. At that moment, the sublimators who were running toward the target in the city received a warning from Yao Ke. Hurry up, they have started the live broadcast early. The leader was stunned. He hurriedly grabbed another person's phone and wanted to open the free app. Who is it this time? Yao Ke paused, and her tone became complicated. Operation Xinhai member Huaisher. Before she finished, a blood-stained face appeared on the live broadcast screen. Countless comments flashed across the screen. 666, it's the third one. It was actually brought forward? He didn't even say anything. Luckily, I went to the toilet quickly. Wow, the person this time is quite good-looking. It's a pity that he died like this. Can you sell him to me? I'll pay you 2 source form crystals. It's confirmed, it's a younger brother. Previous commenter, get lost. He looks so coquettish. Is he a prostitute from the Astronomy Association? Hurry up, hurry up. Amidst the malicious comments, Uncle Bien reached out and took the gun from Rod's hand. He pulled the trigger. The muscular man holding the whip pulled on Huaisher's hair and forced him to face the camera. Uncle Bien slowly raised the gun and pressed it against Huaisher's forehead. Sorry, young man, he said. I didn't want to kill you. I didn't want to either. At that moment, Huaisher grinned at him. Then, under Uncle Bien's stunned expression, a hand suddenly pinched his wrist, twisted, and crushed the fragile bones, completing the standard disarming action of seizing the gun. Then, he aimed at the hand that was grabbing his hair and pulled the trigger. 1 shot. Then, he aimed at Uncle Bien's knees and shot twice. Finally, he got up from the ground and broke Uncle Bien's hands. 3 shots, 4 shots. As Uncle Bien fell to the ground and screamed, Huaisher slowly got up, opened his mouth, gritted his teeth, and pulled out the half-nail nailed to his hand from his flesh. He looked down indifferently at Uncle Bien's frightened face. And I won't do that. They shouldn't have thought that they could restrain Huaisher with iron. No matter how intense the pain was. For Huaisher, this was a common occurrence. During the short period of restraint, the 2 iron nails, which might have been relics from the border, had long lost their effect under the decomposition of the hand of confinement and the fire of alchemy. With the youth's outburst, all the restraints were broken. Green flames ignited on the youth's body, and there seemed to be endless poisonous flames surging from the crack in his chest. The darkness was like a tide, sweeping and spreading, turning into a nightmarish fog. In the dark fog, the evil spirit in the mountain stepped on the blood on the ground and slowly moved forward. Come, The youth looked around at the shocked faces and mockingly crooked his finger at them. Let me experience the power of green sun. In the intense pain, the brawny man with the whip roared. The whip lit up with electric light and lashed at Huai Shi's head. Then, Huai Shi aimed at his head and pulled the trigger. Boom! Brain matter splattered. Idiot! Huai Shi lowered the muzzle and looked away. Next, in the roar of gunfire, the iron door was kicked open. The sublimators, who were ready to retreat, noticed the situation in the room. They took out long guns and short cannons from the box and pulled the trigger at Huai Shi. At the moment when the trigger was pulled, Huai Shi could even hear the crisp sound of friction in the barrel as their index fingers moved. Almost like a horizontal movement, he suddenly slid 3 steps away from the spot and raised his pistol to fight back. Flames shot out from the barrel of the gun. After 2 loud bangs, the empty sound of hammering came from the barrel. There were no more bullets. Huai Shi threw away the gun that had become a burden and smashed the head of the stooped man in the corner, rod, and directly smashed him to the ground. Then, facing the 3 sublimators who rushed up, he raised his right hand. From his palm, the brilliant light burst out together with the steel and condensed into the outline of a spear. Tearing through the wind and moon for 400 years, the long distance from Rome to America, the spear of compassion emerged here. As he waved his hand, dragon blood splashed. Wherever it passed, pure white irises quietly grew from the floor. It was so gorgeous. Chapter 183. Speaking of which, is there a habit of vaccinating at the border? Huai Shi smiled and snapped his fingers. Thus, the dormant virus instantly erupted. In the pure malice, countless strains erupted from the lungs, blood, spinal cord, and brain, bringing with them a deadly high fever and trance. The 3 of them froze in their actions, and the evil spirits shrouded in the smoke of calamity were already charging at them. The live broadcast was in an uproar. Shocking! What's going on? They were killed instead? Green sun is trash. Trash, they only know how to act. Is it bad? Was it arranged beforehand? Everyone is an actor these days. Amidst the chaotic bullet screen, the live broadcast suddenly froze. The countless insults on the bullet screen disappeared in an instant. As all the viewers were stunned, the animation of countless rockets rising appeared outside the screen. They flew to the center of the live broadcast window and exploded into bright virtual fireworks. The roaring sound of an electric guitar sounded out of nowhere. It was like the special effects of a celebration. A line of unbelievable dark golden words appeared on the client of all the viewers of the dark net. A legendary investigator has arrived at the live broadcast. Please offer your respect and respect to our eternal friend at the border of the dark net. Wait, what the hell? F*CK, a legendary investigator? At this moment, not only were the inspectors watching nervously from the Astronomy Association, but also the leaders of Green Sun and countless viewers watching through the border dark net, even Yao Ke, who was in the command center of the Social Security Bureau, could not help but spit on the keyboard and scream. She no longer cared about her ladylike image. The eldest cousin was shocked by her scream and was dumbfounded. What is a legendary investigator? A detective from some place? Big cousin, don't you watch the live broadcast of games? A legendary investigator of the dark net. Legendary? Yao Ke felt that her eyes must be playing tricks on her, but after seeing the gradually dissipating words on the screen, a sense of suffocation arose in her heart. This was the winner of the death game, the strongest participant who had perfectly cleared the cruelest, most difficult, and most incredible modules in the countless games of the dark net and obtained the certification of one of the 3 supreme authorities of the border dark net. Among the countless ascenders and virtual game players in the world, there were only 16 legends. It was not a cheap honor that could be obtained through strength alone. Instead, it was a fruit of honor that was bestowed upon a person who completed an arduous trial comparable to Odysseus's trial with wisdom, determination, and even unbelievable luck. Each of their names is recorded on the flyleaf of the Odyssey. If it were not for the dark net's notice, perhaps no one would have thought that one of the 16 legends was actually hiding in a little-known branch of the Astronomical Association as a small action officer. What the F***ck are you talking about? Instead of exploring the borders and exploring hell, such a talent actually chose to be a peacekeeping officer? Green Sun really caught a ghost this time. Not only the audience, but even the observers from the astronomy club felt a strong sense of disbelief. In the dead silence, Yao Kair swallowed her saliva. I think the rescue team should withdraw. She turned her head stiffly and smiled bitterly. They don't need us to save them. Maybe they'll kill them all like cutting vegetables. Let's take a look first. The dumbfounded cousin stood in front of the screen and stared at Huai Shi's silhouette. His expression gradually became solemn. Let's take a look first. As countless viruses spread, Huai Shi roared in the midst of the sudden loud music. In a moment of daze, the leader instinctively prepared his defense, but when he saw Huai Shi brush past him and pounce behind him, his heart turned cold. Jin Shi. High fever and dizziness filled his consciousness. Jin Shi was stunned for a moment. By the time he reacted, the blood-stained face was already close to him. The concrete floor beneath his feet cracked. Endless fear filled his consciousness under the cover of the ashes, causing him to scream and retreat in fear. However, the evil spirits pressed forward, closing in on him step by step. The cross spear in his hand let out a thunderous roar. He stabbed out. Jin Shi roared, and the power of the sacred Mark Mountain Monarch appeared. Endless power caused his body to expand, turning him into a ferocious half-human half-tiger. Immediately after, dozens of starved ghosts pounced out from his dead body. Then, they were engulfed by the ashes, and there was no more sound. It was as if he had fallen into high-strength concentrated acid. The decomposition did not even cause a single ripple. Only a substantial pain and fear emerged from his body along with the smallpox. The silver light had already torn through his defense and arrived like lightning. In an instant, his body was pierced through. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. He flew backward and was nailed to the wall. He was clearly a third-order sacred mark that was above the mountain monarch, but under this full-strength stab, his sacred mark had already collapsed. Die. A short gap flashed by. When Jin Shi was stabbed to death by Huai Shi in one round, the leader of the Ascendants finally reacted. He roared, raised the ancient sword-like border relic in his hand, and slashed at Huai Shi's back. But then, a sacrificial knife appeared out of thin air and blocked it. At that moment, the evil spirit with his back facing him turned around and grinned at him, revealing a brilliant smile. Immediately afterwards, an axe appeared in his left hand. As he turned around, he slashed at the leader's neck. He raised his sword, blocking Huai Shi's attack. However, after the ascendant named Lin Pu took a step back, he actually woke up from the impact of the origin substance. Even though his face was covered in smallpox, and he was gradually becoming dizzy from the heat. He didn't know how long he had been training for, but in that instant, he instinctively dodged Huai Shi's attack. He reorganized himself, raised his sword high and slashed downwards. Huai Shi took a step back. Immediately afterwards, the entire building began to rumble. For a moment, the entire room seemed to be spinning. As the origin substance fluctuations spread out, a new set of laws was applied, and the room began to spin like a washing machine. When Huai Shi turned around in shock, he saw Uncle Bien lying on top of a blueprint. His severed arm was pressed into the bloodstains on the blueprint. A scholar who specialized in architecture had established a new set of laws, causing the ground to turn upside down and the ceiling to hang upside down. Everything related to architecture had been redefined. Countless flippers popped out of the cement, and the steel bars were reconstructed, turning into a cage that enveloped Huai Shi. Immediately afterwards, it fell apart under the chop of the axe. Uncle Bien's expression twitched. He endured the intense pain and prepared to set up a new set of laws and changes, but then he saw a spear appear in Huai Shi's hand, and he swung it at him without even turning his head. A streak of dragon blood flew through the air. A terrifying aging process descended. Amidst the continuously growing irises, Uncle Bien's vision turned dark, and he lost consciousness amidst the intense heat of the smallpox. The frantic spinning of the heavens and the earth came to an abrupt stop. Immediately afterwards, however, when Huai Shi turned around, he saw Lin Pu, who was very close to him. He seemed to have long since become accustomed to Uncle Bien's settings. He instantly charged forward, seizing the precious opportunity that the old man had created for him, and stabbed out with his sword. Flames appeared on the blade, piercing through the air and creating a powerful wind and thunder. As the stripes appeared on his body, his speed actually increased by 30%. It was almost as if he was going to perish together with Huai Shi. The killing sword stabbed straight at Huai Shi's face, not giving him any room to dodge. Unfortunately, that was just what he thought in his angry eyes. Huai Shi, who had nowhere to escape, seemed to glide. His feet moved 3 inches out of thin air, brushing against the blade and dodging the killing sword. This was a skill that he had secretly learned from Luo Xian. In dozens of recorded replays and reenactments, in order to be able to observe carefully, Huai Shi had finally grasped the surface of this skill after dying countless times. Even so, his legs still felt numb, unable to bear the burden. Lin Pu was stunned. But the big cousin in front of the screen was even more shocked than him. He inconceivably leaned in front of the screen, stunned. This is Teacher Luo's inch step? That's right. Even if he only glimpsed a corner for a moment, he could still recognize it. This kind of rhythm and method of using muscles, even if it was a bit jerky, was exactly the same as that of the old man. His precious opportunity was lost just before this strange sliding step. A terrifying temperature burst forth from the blade, but it pierced through the air. The straight line of fire crossed dozens of meters and finally touched the solid body of the wall. Then there was a loud explosion, and a huge hole was blasted open in the wall. The power is not bad, but unfortunately, it's too slow. Huai Shi had already passed by Lin Pu. The sacrificial knife in his hand sank deep into his chest and came out from his back. Lin Pu instinctively wanted to turn around and grab that damned guy to perish together with him, but he saw Huai Shi raise his hand without looking back. The outline of an axe appeared in his hand, resting on his shoulder and finally hooking his neck. In the next moment, as Huai Shi stepped forward and pulled with his arm, a head flew into the sky with a fountain of blood. It was over. Soon, the round thing fell to the ground, rolled, and stopped at the feet of the last person. That's it? Huai Shi looked at the panicked sublimator with chicken pox all over his face in bewilderment, as if he was even more incredulous than Huai Shi. Nothing else? The last surviving sublimator froze in place. His lips were trembling, but he didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly roared and shouted toward the basement exit. What are you waiting for? Shoot! At the door, a few remaining Green Sun members staggered up and raised their weapons. For some reason, Huai Shi felt an indescribable disappointment. He lowered his eyes and sighed in disappointment. I thought too highly of you. The cruel outline of the axe outlined by blood was slowly raised. Under the dim light, this tragic massacre came to an uneventful end amidst the roar of gunfire and the crisp sound of flesh and bone being torn apart. Soon, everything returned to silence. In the dead silence, only the sharp sound of the chair dragging on the concrete floor slowly approached. Finally, it disappeared into the pool of blood and was no longer ear-piercing. It was just a low sound. It was like the remaining string sound of a cello. So, under the reflection of the tilted camera, The thin figure pulled a chair over and sat in front of the countless screens and viewers. He lowered his head. Through the camera, he quietly stared at the viewers on the other side. His eyes became focused and curious. "That guy from Green Sun, I remember his name is Wind or Wind comment. I can't remember clearly." Huaishur asked calmly. "You should be watching me, right?" As if he received a silent answer, the feminine mountain ghost revealed a cold smile. "This is for you." The final scene appeared in the blurry image with countless noises flickering. It was a blood-stained middle finger. Just like that, in the sudden darkness, the live broadcast ended. Chapter 184. In the evening, it started to drizzle. In the reflection of countless raindrops, it was as if there were invisible illusions covering the world. Through the countless fleeting raindrops, dozens of giant-like illusions could be seen. The giants from the kingdom of Longbow from Hell held fishing rods and threw out their hooks from another depth. Thus, the fishing hooks, which were the size of crane hooks, crossed the long distance between the borders and descended on the scene, hooking onto a lonely building on the outskirts of the city. Just like fishing for a giant fish, they pulled. Along with the silent roars and roars, the entire building and the surrounding area were pulled into an independent border by the fishing giants. The only thing left in the original place was an illusion. Then, with a casual snap of the leader's fingers, a terrifying black light burst out from her fingertips. Flames appeared out of thin air and turned into a mighty tornado that soared into the sky. The terrifying power instantly tore apart the surface of the building, revealing countless traps inside. "The passage is open, quick, quick!" Following the leader's order, the sublimators of the Social Security Bureau carried large shields and rushed into the building while facing the countless explosions. Only the continuous roars could be heard. No one knew how many insidious traps were triggered, and the sound of collapsing could be heard. Ignoring all the walls and traps in their way, the team rushed forward and rushed straight to the core. It was a race against time. Before entering the border, the command center at the rear had already sent a message that the live broadcast had started in advance. There was no time for them to dawdle. The sublimators wearing Mingguang armor rode on giant horses and took the lead, rampaging. But what surprised them was that there were only countless traps waiting for them. Although it was dangerous, no one stopped them at all. All the rescue team's hearts sank. Green Sun's people had already retreated, and this place might already be empty. "Hurry up, hurry up!" The armored sublimator roared angrily and pulled on the reins. The translucent giant horse was a remnant of the border. As the horse raised its body, its iron hooves stomped down. Lightning and rumbling sounds burst forth, and waves of air swept out in a straight line, tearing apart the walls of the labyrinth that were pressing down. "I'll do it, I'll do it!" In the chaos, Yuan Zhao jumped up excitedly and took the lead to step on the protrusions on the wall. He moved forward along the wall as if he was defying gravity. His teammates couldn't stop him. Then it was lifted up in the blast of the explosion. He landed on the ground with his face covered in dirt. He coughed violently and looked handsome for less than 3 seconds. Mr. Tony from a barber shop dyed his hair into an afro. His face was also pitch black. He was in an extremely sorry state. "What's a kid doing?" The leader slapped the back of his head and told him to stay at the back obediently. He waved his hand forward, and a febrile wind burned the last gate into liquid metal. The terrifying temperature spread out along with the pungent smell of blood. Yuan Zhao, who had excitedly ran to the front, almost choked on the blood. Soon after, the sticky blood covered almost every inch of the wall. "It's over." He was stunned for a moment. He turned around and asked, "Sister Mo, is that sissy already dead? If you can talk, then talk more." Mo-san rolled his eyes and angrily slapped the back of his head. His fingertips flicked and ignited a flame. He took the lead and walked into the darkness filled with the pungent smell of blood. As far as the eye could see, it was a hellish scene. It was as if he had walked into a slaughterhouse. Mother, Yuan Zhao, who was following behind, was stunned for a long time. Then he sucked in a breath of cold air. Dead, dead. Miserable like this, he was really dead. Thinking about how the first operation he participated in ended in failure, he suddenly felt a little helpless, and his heart became dispirited. What happened? According to the rules, shouldn't he first fight 300 rounds and then shake his tiger body and make that sissy kowtow? How did he die before 300 rounds? There was no other way. Who told that gigolo to be so weak? If he couldn't save him, then he couldn't blame young Master Yuan for coming late. Such a weak chicken, where did he get the courage to confess to his cousin? He dragged his gun and powerlessly went down. He thought about at least collecting that annoying guy's corpse. Although he was overestimating himself, at least it showed that he had good eyesight. Hey, seeing that you and I are in the same boat, I will reluctantly help you pay for the cremation set meal. Let me see, where is it? Borrowing the light from Mo-san's fire, he poked his head into the basement. Between the flowing blood and corpses, he heard faint echoes of painful groans. Then he saw a pair of dark green eyes slowly lift up in the darkness. Fuck, a ghost! He leaped more than a meter into the air, and subconsciously raised his spear to stab forward. Immediately after, he was kicked aside by Third Mo. Ghost my ass. Don't be so surprised, okay? You've lost all the people in the Social Security Bureau. Yuan Zhao's face was pale with fright. He shrank behind Mo-san and pointed at the end of the basement with a trembling finger. Ghost! Chi. With the sound of friction, in the darkness, the few blood-soaked matches finally lit up, illuminating the tragic appearance of the basement. As if it was ravaged by a hurricane, the floor was a mess. Viscous blood slowly dripped from the walls and gathered in the spreading pool of blood on the ground. Pale corpses fell on top of the pool of blood and overlapped with each other, forming a redundant tower. From the fleeting light of the fire, a blurry and ferocious silhouette was revealed. But what was shocking was that there were clusters of pure white irises and weeds growing in this tragic blood-red color. It was as if a miracle had sprouted from a dead life. It was so beautiful. It was like breaking into an evil spirit's lair in the mountains. Yuan Zhao was intimidated by the bone-piercing chill and froze on the spot. But then, he saw that the stern figure seemed to heave a sigh of relief, and suddenly slumped into the chair. Oh my God, I was scared to death. Huaishir wiped the cold sweat off her forehead in relief. I thought Green Sun had come to kill us again. I missed you so much, comrades. Without waiting for them to react, Huaishir rushed up with an expression of being saved, as if he had finally found his savior. He warmly shook hands with them one by one, almost moved to tears. You don't know, there's not even a door in this damn place, there's no way to go out, there's nothing to eat, let alone go to the bathroom, there's no lighter to smoke. Thank you, Astronomy Society, thank you, Social Security Bureau, comrades, you've worked hard. Mo-san's hand was held, and his cold face couldn't help but twitch. She suddenly felt a strange feeling. What the hell is this? Were you kidnapped, or were you a lone hero that killed into Green Sun's lair and wiped out their whole family? What's the use of a rescue team? When did the members of the Astronomy Society become so good at fighting? Her first reaction was that the damn fatty who came to ask for help was probably playing with them. Dawarashi, please sit. Dawarashi, smoke. Come, Dawarashi, Qualuo. By the time they reacted, their hands were already stuffed with a bottle of iced happy drink. Then they saw Huaishir run to the corner, dragging two guys who were still gasping for breath, and sent them in front of them. Like an old farmer, he gave a simple and bold smile. Look, Dawarashi, this is a gift for you. Captives alive. So, what does this have to do with us? The kidnappers were all killed by you. Are we here to accept the fruits of victory? The corner of Mo-san's mouth twitched. Looking at that idiotic smile, he suddenly felt at a loss. What the hell is this? In a happy and harmonious atmosphere, the Astronomy Society was a family, and the police and civilians were like fish and water. Mo-san noticed Yuan Zhao in a daze in the corner. Yuan Zhao. She was a little worried about the state of the youth, patting him on the shoulder. What's wrong with you? No, nothing. Yuan Zhao looked up as if he woke up from a dream, his sluggish expression squeezing out a smile with difficulty. I will go out and calm down. With that, the youth weakly dragged his spear, turned around and left. Like a walking corpse, he passed through the broken walls along the way, and finally, sat down on the steps outside the building. His pale face scared the big cousin who rushed over. What's wrong? The big cousin looked at him in astonishment. Are you okay, Yuan Zhao? I'm fine. Yuan Zhao smiled stiffly, but his expression looked like he was about to cry. Can't cry, Yuan Zhao, can't cry. Once you cry, something important will be lost forever. But the humiliating tears still couldn't help but flow down his face. No matter what, it was difficult to dispel the scene engraved in his mind. In the darkness, as the match was lifted, the cigarette was lit. That pair of pitch-black eyes that were illuminated by the flickering flame, and that handsome face that was still stunning even though it was stained with blood. His pitch-black hair hung down from his tattered shirt, falling between the blood and the white flowers, as if it had melted into the gradually blurring colors in the darkness, making it difficult to distinguish. That was a solemnity and coldness that couldn't be concealed no matter how tragic the background was or how ferocious the blood color was. It was like seeing an exorcist in the light of heaven who turned around and gave the devil the middle finger, a killer who killed an entire gang for a dog, and then killed another gang, a mysterious hacker who wore sunglasses and a black trench coat and walked in the bullet time. At this moment, the 14-year-old Yuan Zhao suddenly had a deep understanding. Some competitions may not have even started, but the outcome was already predetermined. And he had already lost at the starting line, without the power to fight back. Why? Yuan Zhao looked up to the sky and roared in grief, finally crying out loud, "We're both sublimators, why is he so fashionable?" Chapter 185. Hello? Are you there? 30 minutes later, in the ambulance, Huai Shi was being bandaged and stitched up by the emergency paramedic. He took the mobile phone borrowed from the Social Security Bureau and dialed Ai Qing's number. After a short busy tone, the phone was connected. In the silent conference room. I received the news from the scene. Ai Qing's tone was still calm. Well done, compared to him. He really made a lot of people lose face. Following the girl's words, many of the participants' expressions were a little uneasy, but there was nothing they could do about it. No matter how much they said, could it be as beautiful as what he did? He was able to kill the kidnappers and kill the people of Green Day on live broadcast. Not only did he save the face of the Jinling branch, but he also won a lot of confidence in the follow-up negotiations with the Social Security Bureau. Huai Shi's wave of operation was so amazing that the participants were still wondering whether this was a basic operation or something else, and whether they should sit down first. It couldn't be helped, Ai Qing's calm expression was too confusing. Even if her heart was about to explode with anger, her face was still calm and there was no change. Now that she received a call from Huai Shi, there was no pride in her expression. Instead, it was as if she was sharpening a knife, so calm that it made people panic. Huai Shi felt a little wrong. It seems like I messed up something again? Don't worry, have a good rest. Ai Qing lowered her eyes. I will take care of the rest. After that, she hung up the phone. Let's continue. She turned her phone and looked up with eyes full of malice. Regarding how to screen traitors, I have an idea. After 3 hours of sharpening, the knife was finally revealed. So, the meeting continued. Are you really okay? Huai Shi looked at the hung-up phone in amazement, but soon shrugged and put the matter to the back of his mind. Anyway, it was fine as long as Ai Qing could handle it. She could fight for compensation for him, so he didn't have to worry about losing out. He leaned against the wall of the ambulance and started to rest. In fact, this battle was actually a good thing for the current him. Although he was in a bit of a sorry state, he had unexpectedly consumed his originally abundant vitality through the fierce battle and the healing of his wounds. After venting his anger, he could finally control the plague halo as he wished. He even figured out a way to use it. In short, he said goodbye to his helmet and chemical protective suit, which were shameful. It was simply worth celebrating. Since his advancement, he hadn't slept for 2 or 3 days. He couldn't sleep even if he wanted to. Now that he could finally take a break, he couldn't wait to find a place to have a fat otaku happy dream. Then, he heard a knock on the door of the ambulance. "Sorry to disturb you." With a warm smile, the big cousin walked into the ambulance and sat across from Huai-Shi. "I've already understood the situation at the scene from Mo-san, but I still have some questions to ask." "Please speak." Huai-Shi nodded politely. "How should I address you?" I forgot to introduce myself." The big cousin froze for a moment before laughing awkwardly. He stretched out his hand and said, "My surname is Zhu, and my name is Zhu Hongchen. I am Qin Yu's older brother. I am the head of Jinling's Social Security Bureau. Everyone calls me Big Cousin." "Qin Yu?" Huai-Shi froze for a moment before realizing. Zhu Qingyu was White Emperor's son's name. He was stunned. "Then wouldn't that be?" Zhu Hongchen laughed, as if he had already expected Su Chen's shock. "Wouldn't that be what?" Huai-Shi swallowed his saliva and forcefully swallowed the words brother-in-law. He laughed with difficulty. "Wouldn't that be very impressive?" He finally understood why people called him Big Cousin. He really was Big Cousin. White Emperor's son's older brother, a really important person. When he thought about how stupid he had been when he had first met White Emperor's son, his head began to hurt again. It was over. Big Cousin hadn't come to beat him up. Zhu Hongchen was amused by Su Chen's hesitant expression and shook his head. "Don't worry, Qin Yu already told me. Kids don't understand anything. It was just a misunderstanding." Huai-Shi let out a sigh of relief. Young people shouldn't be so rash in the future. He patted Huai-Shi on the shoulder with a strange smile on his face, as if he had seen through him but didn't want to expose him. His expression even contained a trace of satisfaction and scrutiny, making Su Chen feel as if something wasn't quite right. "It seems that Master Mystic Bird was right. You are the kind of person who has been blessed by the heavens." He sighed softly before suddenly asking, "Are you really not going to consider coming to the Social Security Bureau? When your great-grandfather, Huai Guang, was exploring the borders, the Social Security Bureau was one of his sponsors. Our partnership goes back a long way." Huai-Shi thought about the group of experts at the Social Security Bureau and revealed an awkward expression. How should I put it? I'm doing quite well right now, and I have no plans of changing jobs anytime soon." "That's right. Sometimes the situation at the Social Security Bureau is more complicated. It might not be suitable for you. Everyone has their own ambitions. This can't be forced." Big Cousin nodded tolerantly. He thought for a moment and asked directly, "If it's possible, can you tell me, what is your relationship with Teacher Luo?" "Teacher Luo?" Huai-Shi was stunned. "Who is that? You don't know him?" Big Cousin frowned in confusion. "Then where did you learn you steps?" "Wait." Huai-Shi finally understood what he was talking about. He couldn't believe it. "The Teacher Luo you're talking about, could it be Luo Xian?" Big Cousin was stunned for a long time, as if he had seen a ghost. Then, as if he had understood something, he couldn't help but laugh. No, you're mistaken. Xiao Xian is Teacher Luo's daughter." "Ha, I see. I can roughly guess what's going on. No wonder 2 days ago, when she came back from the cooking demon competition, she came to me to ask about a lot of things in Xin High. Did you guys meet?" "It's a long story." Huaishir shook his head and sighed. Were you challenged? Yes, I almost lost. Huaishir smiled bitterly. I thought I was strong enough, but I didn't expect that I was still a frog at the bottom of a well. I'm sorry about the secret learning. I'll explain it to you another day. No, it's okay. If Teacher Luo knows, she might be happier. The eldest cousin waved his hand indifferently. To be able to learn use steps from Shaoxian, even if it's incomplete, this talent is already amazing enough. To be honest, I've already started to think about how to win you over from the Astronomy Society. By the way, what do you think of Sister Imo? As he said that, he bent down, put his elbows on his knees, and revealed a strange smile. You see, if you want a stricter boss, we also have one in the Social Security Bureau. It's not the same thing, thank you. Huaishir was speechless. How come everyone in the Social Security Bureau likes to poach people? After making a joke, Big Cousin stood up and patted him on the shoulder. Have a good rest. I won't disturb you anymore. Someone will send you back later. I wish you success in the new talent competition. Young man, I have faith in you. Before he left, he even made a gesture of cheering him on. Hey, big brother, are you really the director? However, Huaishir understood more and more why he was called Big Cousin. He didn't put on any airs at all and was still so young. There was no sense of distance at all. I'm shocked. How come it's you? 10 minutes later, Huaishir saw Li Jian, who posed hopeless face. Through the car window. That rampant sports car madly rushed towards him. At the last second, it braked and stopped in front of Huaishir. Li Jian stuck his head out and hurriedly shouted, "There's no time to explain. Get in the car." Have you been thinking about this line for a long time? I said there's no time. Get in the car. Li Jian was so irritable that it was scary. He directly reached out and pulled Huaishir into the car window. Then, he stepped on the gas pedal and the car sped away. Half of his body was outside and the other half was lying on Miss Hu-Po. Huaishir struggled awkwardly and finally climbed into the front passenger seat. After fastening his seatbelt, he panted and turned around. Are all Yingzhou people as passionate and unrestrained as you? Do all Dongxia people like to complain as much as you? Li Jian turned around and retorted. His gaze was so sharp that it seemed like sparks were going to fly out. You're still joking around at a time like this. In American entertainment films, you have to tell a joke at a time like this to entertain yourself. Otherwise, the atmosphere will be too heavy. Huaishir adjusted his sitting position and asked casually, "What happened?" The Jinling branch of the Astronomical Society was attacked by Green Sunday F***CK. Huaishir was so shocked that he almost jumped out of the car roof. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up. You're anxious at a time like this. Li Jian snorted coldly. Nonsense, my supervisor is still there. If anything happens to him, what about my salary this month? Huaishir directly pulled out his axe and dagger. He wanted to hack from the Confucius Temple to the Old Street. Those bastards from Green Sun rebelled. But they were quickly suppressed. Li Jian glanced at Huaishir. If the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. It's not your turn to do some rescue mission. Don't worry. Huaishir had just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the girl in the driver's seat continue to say, "But the attack caused an explosion." He instantly tensed up. Huaishir's eyes widened. But fortunately, there were no casualties. Li Jian seemed to be used to breathing heavily. After seeing Huaishir breathe a sigh of relief, she continued, "But in the chaos, a member of the Astronomical Society was taken hostage. Huaishir was completely powerless and defeated. I beg you, can you say it all at once? Don't worry, the kidnappers were immediately shot dead by your supervisor. Well, the deputy minister who was taken hostage was said to be frightened." Li Jian laughed gloatingly. After all, he was almost shot in the head by his own people. It must have left a considerable psychological trauma, right? So what exactly does it have to do with me? Huaishir was helpless. You're not going to find me to take the blame, right? You're thinking too much. Li Jianhupa stepped hard on the accelerator and the car sped up. Green Sun retreated after the attack failed, but they left something at the scene. She paused for a moment and looked deeply at Huaishir. It said it was for you. That bastard Feng Zhongheng wants to harm me. Huaishir was instantly alert. Chapter 186. Thanks to Rijian-Hupo's insane driving speed, Huaishir arrived at the Jinling branch within 5 minutes. He saw that a yellow line had been set up outside. Okay, Legend Chan, you can get off now. Rijian-Hupa lazily leaned on the chair with a lollipop in his mouth. He pointed outside and said, Remember to give me a good review in the Social Security Bureau's return visit. You guys actually have a return visit? Huaishir was stunned. Also, what the hell is Legend Chan? Huh? You still don't know? Rijian-Hupa raised his eyes and glanced at him. That's your current nickname. What the hell kind of nickname is that? Legend Chan, don't tell me you want to play dumb about this? The Dark Net has already given you a gold certification. What's that? Huaishir suddenly realized something amidst his shock. KP, that bastard, is going to persecute me again. You Dongsha people are really asking for praise when I don't know how good I am. Rijian-Hupa sighed helplessly. Forget it. After all, I didn't expect you to have this kind of talent other than seeking death. Anyway, you're very good. Now, in the whole world, other than America's Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're the second Legend Chan to reveal your identity. You're also quite good-looking. Now, you're super popular on the Darknet. Huaishir felt more and more uneasy. What's with the super popular? Would there be a small Huaishir fan club in a place like the Darknet? Thinking of a group of girls holding light sticks and cheering for him, he actually had some faint expectations in his heart. Of course, it's the bounty. Rijian-Hupa glanced at Huaishir's head with evil intentions, which made the young man's neck feel cold. After all, many people still lack a sufficiently heavy collectible on their wall. The Human Exhibition Bureau has already taken out 40 million to reward you. If one day you don't want to live anymore, let me help you out since we've been through thick and thin together, okay? No, thank you. She didn't even want to know what kind of place the exhibition center was. If you don't want to live anymore, just give me all of your equipment and we'll talk about it. Huaishir replied in a huff, not wanting to know what kind of place the exhibition center was. Bang! The car door closed. He held up his ID card, crossed the yellow line, and walked straight into the building. As soon as he entered, he saw countless indistinct shadows. It was as if time had turned back. Amidst the mess and dilapidated walls, countless pieces of bricks and dust slowly floated in the air, slowly returning to their original positions. After a short 10 minutes, the outermost area had been repaired, leaving only the center of the hall marked with the yellow line of the second floor. There was a black mass of heads, all of them were officials who were ready for battle. After noticing that Huaishir had walked in, many people looked at him in shock. After all, Huaishir's appearance wasn't much better than before. He wore a tattered shirt, his body was covered in blood, and his waist-length hair was tied into a messy ponytail. Coupled with his face that was becoming more and more coquettish after his advancement, it was as if he had seen a ghost. Along the way, it was as if he was walking on a runway, attracting everyone's attention. Among them, there were a few old friends who had chased after him and slashed him a few hours ago. Seeing this, Huaishir couldn't help but raise his hand and rub the stubble that had finally appeared on his chin. After waiting for such a long time and experiencing a warm-up exercise, the remaining energy seemed to have found a place to use it, and it finally grew a little. This made Huaishir very happy. Growing a beard was great. Growing up was joyful. He was happier than old Lu growing his hair. Hey, Huaishir, over here. In the crowd, old Xiao turned around and saw him. He grinned again and pointed to the thing in the middle of the crowd. Green Sun left you a package, just waiting for you to come and sign it. Damn it, why is it you again? You did it on purpose. Huaishi's expression twitched, and he suddenly felt like slashing him. Then, he saw a group of eyeballs fall out of their sockets. Dozens of faces had a dull look on their faces. It was really pleasing to the eye. What the hell? Luo Ming jumped up in shock and pointed at the young man's face. He looked back at old Xiao in astonishment. He is Huaishi? Yes. Old Xiao nodded and said with a sigh, I haven't seen you for a month, and you do look a little more coquettish than before. But it's normal for young people to develop faster. Normal my ass. Luo Ming wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He looked at the face that was like a road roller crushing over him in terms of looks, and the eyes of the branch office clerk around him lit up with little stars. Simply put, their expressions twitched, and their hearts turned cold. They really wanted to rush up and break Huaishi's penis. But when they thought about the explosive strength of the other person in the live broadcast, and how their penis would most likely be broken, they felt even sadder. Under the many strange gazes, Huaishi looked calm, but he was actually very scared. He was afraid that this group of bastards would suddenly jump up and kill him, the most embarrassing member of the Tianwen society, like they did not long ago. But soon, Chun Yen with the mohawk came out from the crowd and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, old Xiao already explained it to us. Anyway, sorry. Also, you did well. Well done. Luo Ming also patted him on the shoulder and could not help but sigh. You're much better than me anyway. I'll treat you to a drink next time as an apology. Count me in. I kicked you, sorry. I kicked you too. Wait a minute, can minors drink? Then you can't go to the bar either. Don't you know who the girls in the bar will look at? Eating is fine, right? I know a good barbecue place. The portions are solid and the sauces are excellent. They did not hold a grudge against Huaishi for causing them to be punished, nor did they think about getting back at him. The office members were all very straightforward. No one jumped out to make things difficult for Huaishi. Instead, they took the initiative to apologize and invite him to eat another day, then made way for him. The enthusiasm of the welcome was beyond Huaishi's expectations. Soon, Huaishi saw the package that Green Sun had left for him. It was a black suitcase with a simple primordial lock on it and a sign with Huaishi's name on it. It was obviously a gift for Huaishi. He walked to the front. Naturally, there were office members who had been waiting for him for a long time to put on thick layers of explosion-proof clothing, a ceramic bulletproof vest, and a helmet. There was also a layer of anti-chemical plastic isolation room around him. They were prepared for the worst. Do you really want me to open it? Huaishi was very guilty. How about we do an X-ray first? Don't worry, I'll go with you. An office member wearing a mahjong mask and codenamed 9 Lotus Lantern patted Huaishi's shoulder. He raised a large shield and told him in Roman, even if it's full of alchemy explosives, it won't hurt you at all. You're making me even more guilty. Huaishi's expression twitched. I haven't brushed my teeth yet. Can I take a shower first? Don't worry, I bought you life insurance. Young man, don't be afraid. Just do it. An office member wearing a sparrow mask pushed his shoulder and directly pushed him to the front. Huaishi looked back at him suspiciously until he looked away guiltily. Strange, why does this guy look so annoying? I kind of want to beat him up. Huaishi slowly retracted his gaze and finally looked at the suitcase in front of him. He hesitated for a long time. Under the urging and ridicule of the sparrow, he finally made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and stomped his feet. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, it couldn't be avoided. What could Green Sun do to him in the Jinling branch of the Astronomical Association? Huaishi completely forgot that he was kidnapped in the branch. He reached out and took off the origin substance lock. The lock that was specifically designed to deal with his origin substance was easily unlocked. The next moment, like an explosion, a large amount of pale white gas spewed out from the gap and instantly covered the entire plastic sublimation isolation room. "Be careful of the poisonous gas," someone yelled at the top of his lungs. The surrounding office members instantly pulled out their guns, swords and knives, and 4 machine guns began to warm up. Huai Shi was immediately protected by the 9 Lotus lantern behind him. He could only see countless faint shadows emerge from the thick white fog. In an instant, the surroundings were sealed and they were completely surrounded. The chill was bone-chilling. Yes, it was cold air. Huai Shi suspiciously reached out and touched it. It was clearly mist formed by dry ice. Then, a black shadow that bore the brunt of the attack jumped up. It leaped into the air and raised the strange weapon in its hand. As its 5 fingers strummed, a soft sound of a guitar spread out. Colorful lights burst out from the fog, illuminating everything. It formed a strange light pollution that was like a disco and scattered in all directions. Under everyone's gaze, dozens of dwarves the size of children jumped out of the fog. This group of midgets had wrinkles all over their faces, strange garlands on their heads, and pure white clothes. They stood in a row like kindergartners. Then, in the warm and peaceful sound of the guitar, they surrounded Huai Shi and sang in unison with solemn and serious expressions. "It will never change, until the end of time, let us be friends forever, what the hell?" Not only Huai Shi, but everyone else was dumbfounded. However, Huai Shi had a vague guess in his heart, because he was so familiar with the tune. It was clearly the nursery rhyme he sang after being kidnapped. It was just that. Well, it was about 100,000 times better than the version he sang. The group of midgets looked strange and ugly, but when they sang, they sounded like the sounds of nature. Regardless of whether it was the Astronomical Association's restraining devices or other attacks, they were all like a gentle breeze, turning into phantoms in front of them. They themselves were illusions. They were mayflies that existed in the dream in the box. In this unprecedented, awkward atmosphere, the melodious melody spread out. After the dozens of midgets stood together and sang the nursery rhyme, the short one holding the guitar ran in front of Huai Shi and pulled out a piece of paper from the guitar case and handed it to him. "Hello, Mr. Huai Shi. This song that was requested for you by Mr. Feng Ping has been sung. Please put a tick here." Don't worry, he has already paid in advance." "Yes, here it is, thank you." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.